Hello, everybody. Hopefully, you can hear me, and hopefully, Richard and Welshie are going to make some noise and you can hear them too, so we don't have another half an hour of me mucking about. Be the worst April Fools ever if you do that to me, guys, so please make some noise, and if the chat can hear, it'd be a big help for me. Oh my god, it is not happening again. Oh no.
Getting pelters off of Rachel
What about
already.
now?
Hello.
Welshie, you're allowed to say stuff as well.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm talking. I'm talking the whole time.
Right. I know exactly what that feature is now, and I won't have to do that ever again.
Well, that
So,
was good, mate. That was
hello,
1 minute.
welcome to stream
difficulties rather
2.
than 20.
And now that the panic is over of me having to click lots and lots of things, I can get a bit more organised for you guys. And thanks for coming back and watching. See some familiar faces, well, familiar usernames on the sidebar there, and some familiar faces as well. And we're going to try something a bit different this time. So we're going to go for a format that's a bit more about the sort of almost a seminar like feel. So we're looking for you guys to feed in as we go, and we'll sort of try and bring you into the conversation. And this time it's going to be a focus with the rumours of Heresy that you've seen getting a new rule set, plastic kits, etc. And the leaky cheese video that was very sort of detective heavy with his way of working through the product codes. And just that sort of impetus, it's good. It's convenient for us. We were going to do this anyway, so let's just use this as an excuse to carry on as if we are finger on the pulse heresy addicts. So we're going to talk through some of the way that we approach the game, the way that we will sort of when someone gets in touch and asks for a game, what we do, and try and bring some of you guys' opinions in there, and then with that in mind about those changes to the game, what we would like to change, and some of it's going to be controversial, maybe the wrong word. I think we're going at it from things that we think would work for us. Doesn't mean it works in your meta or for your group or for your army. So if you disagree, let's keep it civil, preferably. But we're big lads, so we can take it on the chin if you want to have a fight with us, and hopefully it doesn't put you off tuning in. So it's really let's just bring in the other guys. So Richard, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm not bad, mate. I'm doing good. I'm looking forward to this one. As you said, there may be some controversial stuff that crops up, but I think we'll have a lively debate on it and discussion.
I hope so.
Yeah.
And what you been working on this last couple of weeks?
Militia, mate. Pretty much just ploughing through them. I think I'm up to 10 completed out of 140. so I'm getting there.
Some way to go. And Welshie, what about you? How are you getting on?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm good. Aye, got a wee bit of sunburn. I don't know if it's shown on camera, but yeah, a little bit tomato red over here, inertia. But yeah, no, otherwise very well. Just what I'm working on has been tiny wee titans. So I've got 3 done. 4th one's sitting here beside me, just out of shot, but it's on sub-assemblies, ready to go. And yeah, I'm quite hyped for AT at the minute, so that's my thing.
As we can tell, going by your hinty post that you've put up, that's more on that and maybe in future streams. Sort of in the planning
There's not a
stages.
time for that, man. It's let it gestate a wee bit.
And what have you been working on then besides the AT? Anything else?
As well as my tiny titans, I'm getting over the line with my bigger titan.
Very nice. Yeah. Very nice.
So that's about. It's just there nearly, but no, that's it. Titans, and more titans.
Nothing wrong with that. That's always good to see the bigger stuff out. So let's get started then, I guess. So this is sort of how we approach the game here. So coming at it from, I've got the rule book if you're wanting to follow along, page 128, preparing for battle of the big rule book. if anyone has the actual
Yeah.
book and not PDFs or whatever. So when it comes in, let's say you get a phone call, the Facebook message, your pal Kieran is getting in touch and says, "Fancy a game? What's the sort of the first thing really that you think about when you get, you've got the game, Friday night game? What are you going to do?" Let's start with Richard then.
I know I've got the game, so I pretty much just, I guess at the time when you contact me, let's say in our scenario, we would decide the points and the value and where we're playing. So let's, shall we assume we're playing at my house?
Well, that's actually one of the sort of points I've got. When someone asks like, fancy a game, I think for me it matters where you're playing because of this game and the scale of the units and the models and the points. I think when I'm on the road, I take a different list to when I play at home. I don't know if you guys
absolutely
agree.
Absolutely, that's sort of the approach I'm going towards. Where are we playing, and that sort of dictates the models I'm going to be looking at taking. So let's say we decide we're playing at your house. We decide our points values, and then it's on to me then to decide what I'm going to bring. And then I'll just start working through pretty much what units I'm going to take, working through my list. I won't go into how I build my list at the minute. I think we'll cover that in a wee bit.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much it. Yeah, I don't think there's anything more I can say on that.
What about you, Welshie?
Well, aye. So more or less what you said. I won't repeat that, but I have an actual buying philosophy at the minute, where I don't buy anything that can't fit in one of my cases that I've got. So where we're playing is borderline irrelevant to me because everything I own fits in the cases. Apart from obviously stupid shit like the Titans, like they need a bespoke travel system. But for my armies in general, I sold all my jets and all my awkward clunky items last winter. So literally my entire like 7,500 point Iron Warriors army. Let's say I'm using that because my other army's not ready to go.
I've just cut you off there. Someone has come in there and said Titans get a special pass. So when you said you've sold off all your bulky stuff,
yeah, except for them, you know what I mean. So yeah, like my whole army's good to go. So it's the transport situation is not really an issue for me. I more really care about the nitty gritty minutia list selection. I have a thing in my head that I work through when I'm doing that, but
I'm the same.
Do I jump the shark and get too far ahead? But no, like really at that point, if you say like, game Friday night here in South, right? All I care about is like how many points we're playing, and then is it like a one-shot game, just like a pick-up, or is there a story to it? Are we continuing from our last Friday night 3K game? Yep, that's never happened, but hypothetically in this scenario, what's like, why are we playing, I guess, is the next question to ask. And then that
why is like a very sort of philosophical, you're almost getting quite deep there. Why are we playing? It's like a...
Yeah. Oh, okay, no. Not why are we playing. We're playing because we want to play Warhammer, but why are our little men fighting each other? You know what I mean?
So that's, I think we're kind of similar there. I didn't expect it to be much in that sort of, I mean, it's nice to hear you wouldn't say, no, I'm not going round to that dickhead's house for a start. That's nice.
Well, I didn't think that was safe for radio, you know.
But there is that sort of, I think you get into sort of a special mindset. So one of the topics I've kind of got there is, and this could be quite controversial in terms of, because I like to think I don't do this, but you know what I've got. So you're coming round to my house, and you think, let's say I only had 3,000 points of one army. That list tailoring is something that I think is more common than people let on. Just had Willie's telling me you're really loud, Richard. I don't know if that means you're got the microphone right up to your mouth or not.
I'm just really small. I'll slide back a bit.
So, list tailoring is obviously something that is seen. It is a negative thing. It's not something that it will ever be portrayed in a positive way. But what about sort of one of the debates we've had, and hopefully this is going to stir up some, rather than just slagging us off in the chat for tidy rooms and typhons and the like. List tailoring for me is almost inevitable to a degree, in that if I know you only have Terminators, then the Flamers are staying at home, or they're not coming out of the case. So what do you do, Richard? Let's start with again. What do you do to try and avoid list tailoring when you're coming up with your lists?
That's a good point, because I think subconsciously sometimes you're always sort of doing that. Like you're saying about the Terminators, you're always subconsciously going to say there's no point in me taking Flamers. But I think the way when I build my list, I don't think about my opponent in such a way as in, when I build my list, I have a certain sort of list of criteria, and I give myself questions. I go through those questions, and that's how I build my list. I never think about the opponent, because I think if you think about the opponent, it sort of leads you down that tailoring path.
Yeah.
And you can leave yourself short as well if your opponent brings something you're not expecting. So yeah, pretty much that's it. I build the list looking at me and my army and not thinking about my opponent.
And what about you, Welshie, in terms of that? Almost, let's call it a temptation. What do you do to try and prevent that?
I think it's like we talked about last month, man. It's a big part of the social contract. So like you could just and I'm actually a great example of this, right? My only person within driving distance that I get to fight against is Barry. He's got Custodes, and he's only got about 3,700 points painted, right? So if we're playing a 3K game, I know that like 80% of his army like is going to be there. 80% of his collection is going to be there, right? Now, I've got twice as many things as that. I've got things that he probably realistically can't touch if I was to bring them. So it's like that age-old thing. Like, I want to go and have fun for 3 hours, but actually it's about 6 hours by the time you talk about like setting up the table and all that. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go into somebody's house just to kick their teeth in at Warhammer because I've got nothing to prove. So I bring an army that I know is competitive, but is not a direct hard counter. And it's just like so there's two sides to that coin though. You can overcompensate and deliberately untailor your list, and then you just look like a dick because you've brought soft shit and you're going to get hammered no matter what because you've brought a really soft army because you don't want to get accused of list tailoring. So that I think Dick's philosophy is the best, is that you just build your army the way you want to do it, and then whatever the other guy's got is what he's got, and that's it. You know what I mean? Like, I build my list to have fun. Like, when I'm picking units, my priorities are basically like, have I just finished painting anything? If yes, it goes in, even if it doesn't fit. Am I really excited to use a unit? Then again, if yes, it just goes in. And then like Dick says, I've got a checklist. So obviously you need at least 2 options for anti-tank because you need a wee bit of redundancy. You need a bit of high rate of fire for anti-infantry. It doesn't have to be low AP, but high rate of fire. You need at least 2 options for that. You know, like you need to tick all these tactical boxes to build an all-comers list. And then if you do that, you're going to have a good game. You know, and that's it. Like, it's a tough one. It's a fine line to walk on, you know, and especially if you're playing against people you know and people you like, you don't want to be that guy, you know.
And how would that differ for both of you? And I'll just keep doing Richard Welshie because it's easier. How does that differ when you go to an event over coming round to a pal's house for a game?
Honestly, it doesn't. Because of the checklist I use to build my lists, it covers all my bases and it covers everything I know I could potentially come across. So, as a sort of brief example of the checklist I go through in my head, first thing first would be sorting out my objective grabbers, my objective takers. because they're going to win the game at the end of the day. So am I taking tacticals? Am I taking assault marines, or what? What is going to be grabbing my objectives for me? That's sort of my baseline. And then I go through, how am I going to kill powered armor? How am I going to kill AP2 Terminators? How am I going to deal with armor? How am I going to deal with super heavies? And once I go through those options, I've covered nearly all the bases. And then at the end of that, then I start chucking in, units I want to try out. Stuff I've just painted. Patch little holes in my list where I feel like I probably need to get some more stuff in there. Maybe I've not brought enough anti-tank. I'll put that in. So my approach to both a pickup game and an event is the exact same.
On you go, Welshie.
Yeah, I mean, similar. I think me and Dick are actually really the same in how we build it. The only thing is, for an event, I do tailor it to the story. I care quite deeply about that, even if it leaves me short in some areas. For if anybody's watching, but you two might remember, like my last army list, then I think it was June 2019 was the last event I got to, and I had like 2 distinct halves, and that was like representing the passing of the torch from my old Warsmith to my new one. So I had like a hammer and anvil theme, and like the army was pretty shit in a competitive sense, but it was really fluffy and thematic, so I liked it. And I'd just painted basically Kier Valen, a Cestus, a Storm Eagle, so I was like, oh man, how do I fit these in? But I don't have enough to do full air cabs, so let's make it as 2 different Grand Battalions, and one's coming to rescue the other one. So yeah, for me, like at events, the story comes first, and then the other priorities that I would normally use for a pickup game fill in after that, but in the same order. And it's just like, yeah, make sure that you can kill anything, but you don't load up to kill one specific thing, I guess.
Yeah.
Especially at an event when you're playing 5 games, you could play 5 completely unique, different armies that if you go down that old like rock, paper, scissors methodology where you think, all right, well, I'm going to take a rock and just hope everybody else has got scissors, then like you'll ruin people's day if they come with the army that's like the perfect foil for you, and your day will be ruined if somebody comes with the like the other way around the circle where like your army's just a victim for them. So I think it's really important just to like be able to fight anything,
No, I think that's fair enough.
Yeah.
I think that's the right sort of. I think my approach is probably in an event. I put a bit more thought into the the sort of theme. So like in a friendly game where I've got all my models here at home, it's pretty much is just like, well, let's just pick things that I like to use that are there. Like I'll just grab a few dreadnoughts, or I'll grab a few like something I've not used in a while, and it doesn't matter whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. It's something I've not used in a while. It's easier for me because it's so close. When you're traveling somewhere, it's probably that more. You need to take a little bit of time to think, have I got enough objective grabbers, which is something which, I mean, that might come up in some of your guys' views, but it's something that I don't really see. I think that's one of my flaws, not to try and jump ahead, but one of the flaws in the game is that I'm not convinced that 2 troops choices is enough for compulsory. But we can cover that when we get to that stage.
I have this idea, right, just because you've breached it, so I might as well just throw this in now. For tactical squads in a 30k list, I feel like you should have to take all 20 of them, but get the option to combat squad them into 2 squads of 10. Just the same way you can do take 10 and split to 2 5s, but scaled up for like the horde mode, so to speak. And then I think at that point, if you've got a minimum of 40 guys, like no matter what, but they could operate in 2 blocks of 20 or 4 blocks of 10, that would probably like make games just slightly better, But that's my opinion. You don't need to agree with it. That's fine. It's just like it's something that I think about a lot.
No, I think there's
No,
kind of jumping in. Richard, if you want to say something there before I wheel us back into the now rather than the future.
No. I was just going to say, I think that's quite interesting. But that would open some versatility options, wouldn't it?
Yeah, man.
So some of the chat comments. So it's Jodie's kind of right there of saying if you know who you're playing and what they're taking, you can't help but tailor the list. But there's maybe a line that you don't go too far down. If you can still have a good game if you tailor. It's just, I guess, an example of if you knew your opponent had loads of land raiders, if you just loaded up on like 30 las cannon devastators and loads of guys that can smash through those tanks, probably not going to be a very fun game. But there's nothing wrong with taking 10 las cannons and hoping that you get lucky with your rolls through the game before they get to you, sort of thing. And then if you have that conversation, set the narrative, for example, a Zone Mortalis game where certain units aren't available and some units are really handy to take, then you kind of know what to expect from that perspective from Stephen. I think that's kind of right. I think that's maybe the game doesn't encourage enough conversation before, and that you might see that in some of the theme of what I think should change coming up. I think the game tries to set the expectation of here is a rule book, follow the rule book, and that's it. Doesn't really encourage you to sort of play narrative, really. Maybe that's been a bit harsh on the rule set, but I think we've, as a community, have decided that narrative's the way to go, as I can see some of the comments saying much the same, but I don't... flicking through that rulebook and actually looking at it as research for this, it doesn't really say anything beyond sort of be a good sport and do it properly. I don't know if you guys noticed that.
Yeah.
The most important rule on page 1, is it? Still there? Did they take it out for that book? No, the most important rule is to have fun. But no, I think you're right, man. But the rules are just a framework, aren't they? They're a framework to ensure that like the universal language of Warhammer is followed. So you go to any Warhammer club in any country, anywhere in the world, and other than the actual local language barrier, you could play a game of 30k, and because you're all singing off the same hymn sheet. So the rule is successful in that sense, but when you're making a one-size-fits-all like set of rules, the framework has to be quite slack, doesn't it? And then it relies on players to self-police, you know.
And what...
I think it's... sorry.
No, on you go.
No, I was just going to say, going on about the rule book and the framework, I think as players as well, a lot of the time we find it hard to deviate from the written rule without that already built trust between us as players. Which that's something I'm going to go on to later. But
okay. And there's a comment, I prefer Finn's number 1 rule, don't be a dick. I think that is basically what that first page really says, but it should be spelled out a bit more. I think it says it all when I've been writing the event packs for the Heresy.Scot stuff. Like, I do over-egg that a lot. And it's not because I expect people to do it, but it only takes one person to do it to make 4 or 5 people, well, 5 people if you play 5 games over the weekend, have a really shit time at an event. And when you're running events for less than sort of 30 people, that's quite a high proportion of your gamers are going to have a shit time. And I think that's something that we as a community seem to have stamped it out. But there's nothing, like, for example, why don't you, Richard, go to a tournament 30k? If someone organised one, why wouldn't you go?
Why wouldn't I go?
Yeah.
It's just not interesting. You know, it's I just play 30k for the narrative. I'm not into the stress of having to come up against a manky player and dealing with that rubbish, really. And yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's a good question, but I've never really thought about it because I just know it'd be a no.
And what about you, Welshie?
It's just not for me, man. It's
no.
I don't play tabletop games to flex my ego. You know, it's just not what I'm here for. I'm here for the story and the crack. You know, I won't go as far as saying I'm here to make friends, but I'm here to have a good time. And like tournaments for me, and that like over competitive alpha nerd thing, it's just a cringe fiesta. I'm just not up for it. Yeah, and you know, if people are into it, then they're into it. Whatever, man, live and let live. But it's not for me. If I want to like feel good about beating somebody, I'll go take up boxing. You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel like I've got anything to prove. And if my wee men get killed, then boo-hoo, my wee men got killed. As long as both players had fun, and then that's all that matters, you know.
No, sorry.
No, that's it. I'm finished, man. It's just not for me. Like, and I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't understand getting in that headspace. You know, especially like the games are so inherently unbalanced, and we're dealing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
You know what I mean? Like, as far as random number generators go, a D6 is a horrible example, and that's coming from me, who's like in air quotes a data scientist. You know what I mean? It's like it's just absurd, man, that people would think that that's the important thing in life to be like to be thought of as like being an elite player at. But I know it's a thing, so I know that maybe I'm the weirdo for feeling like that, because obviously globally the tournament scene is massive.
Not in 30k though. Not, I would say the Horus Heresy's kind of avoided that, and no one is jumping in on the chat saying whether what their view is, but it'd be interesting to hear from people. Like, for me, I just don't think it's that fair a game. I don't and that's maybe it might not come up in this sort of chat about just the early game, but when we actually talk about the rules, that I get my entire turn and you get an entire turn is so skewed to the first player that if you wanted to, I would imagine anyone in this chat could build a list that would win in the first 2 turns of a game if their opponent wasn't expecting it. And all that ends up happening is that sort of 40k style, what's the best army this month? What's the new codex that's done the power creep that means I can run 7 Riptides and win before you even get to pick up your dice? And I think that just, I don't know, it's just never done it for me. I've been to 40k tournaments and I've got my head kicked in at them by like some horrible lists, and I don't know why I kept going. I just got to the point where I was saying, well, nah, I don't think the like I've probably been single-handedly responsible for the death of the entire Space Wolf chapter in 40k 3 times over with the amount of models I've lost over the years, and it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't, like, because you just rack up and play the next person, and I think that's where when someone tries to thread a narrative, even a very simple narrative, through a few games that link them together, it just makes a difference. Because think of the games that you sort of have a laugh about, and you remember the time that your one tactical marine chased down 5 Terminators in combat, and that's what won you the game. That's what's more funny from a narrative point of view. If you're playing purely for winning, you'll be raging at that, because that's, you just rolled really badly on your leadership roll and you got smashed, and now your opponent's moving up the chain and you're moving down the chain because you're getting you lost the game. I just find that really shit and not fun.
I've always sort of found it hard when people go on about tournaments and they talk about playing 40k or 30k in a tournament, because you can't, it's not in my opinion, it can't be that tactical. You can't be that, talented at playing a dice game. So it just doesn't add up in my head why you would want to go down that avenue.
So that's got a bit of folk in the chat there jumping in. So
I think Alex O'Donnell summed it up perfectly, man. It's about cinematic moments. That's expressed it in a way that I should have said it, but didn't. But he's nailed it.
It's good to know that as Alex, because Alex is putting some feedback. He wants us to discuss more novel events at some point, and I do have the rulebook next to me. I was doing some early research earlier, but not tonight, but another time for you, Alex. So I think, like, generally the theme there in the comments is so a good point is it gives a bad image to the game, and I think that's where, I mean, I've been at ones in Stirling where the guy who's playing on the top table, he gets so drunk on the Saturday night he loses the first game on the Sunday, and I think that's funny, because that's like, he could go on to win the event, but he's just so enjoying the weekend that he doesn't care. That's my sort of player. But I've been on the receiving end of some right doings, and it's just so impersonal, where your opponent isn't talking to you and not having a laugh.
The funny story about that I've got for you is from Michael Hans, who went to a Middle Earth tournament, and he said as he was set, it was an Age of Sigmar tournament, and he said he basically set his army up, and everybody probably in the chat knows Michael as well, but his armies are always lovely, and he takes like green display balls and stuff like that, and he said, like, he went in for a handshake and the guy was like, look mate, I don't give a fuck about sportsmanship, I'm here for best general, and like, and you're like,
savage.
And like that's like, imagine just saying that to somebody at the table, you know what I mean? And
I think then
the guy did absolutely smash him,
I think that would be where I would want to try and get, like, if you know you're going to lose, but try and give away as few points as possible. So like moving your units round the side of the board so you can never be charged and stuff, just trying to minimise the points they get would really annoy them, and that would be the sort of trolly way I would play.
I think I'd definitely go for like absolute troll mode at that point.
Yeah.
Like move my guys off the table or whatever, or just go really, really slow and just think, I can be a dick as well.
So we've also got games should be about the cinematic moments from Alex, which I think's pretty true. We've got an Aussie watching, which is fantastic. I hope you're not born in 1997 because that'll make me feel very, very old. But I think the Aussie guys have got it kind of spot on. Like I've said this in the past to the guys off the stream. I think the Australian scene is the kind of pinnacle, with some of those key people that work in that community of getting things going. 1999, someone's just said they were born. Oh my god!
Those guys, especially the ones in Melbourne, like that sort of little crew, they're absolutely amazing, man. They've all got the right mentality, and their hobby is absolutely top tier.
That's fine. He is corrected. He was born in 1982, which is puts him as older than me, so I feel a bit better now. And yeah, well, Jodie's saying if you don't make a grown man cry once, it's not been a good event. I don't think I've ever made anyone cry at an event. There's a game that I won't bore you with where I Jaws of the Werewolf Demon Prince off the board, and the guy was very confident he was going to kill me with it, and I just threw that power in anything but a 6 and he was fine, rolled a 6 and died, and he was not impressed because he didn't know that rule existed. Anyway, so folk that try to win at all costs with Plastic Spacemen need to have a long, hard look at themselves. I would agree with that. And someone sort of standing up, I think it's Lee Low, competitive's fine, but it's a social contract. And I think that social contract, in essence, is what we're trying to bottom out by having this conversation. It's a very abstract thing, because I think that list tailoring is an excellent. Some people would say they do, and some people would say they definitely do. But when you actually look at the list, sometimes I would say that's a bit iffy for people. But I think that social contract would be interesting to try and define that. That'd be an interesting project, blog post or whatever to try and get through that. Okay, so we've kind of got to the point where you've written your list, but we haven't really talked about the points. So when I think of points in 30k, we always say 3k. We've always done 3k. It's all like I don't think I've ever played anything but 3k unless it's been a special occasion. What do you think it is about 3k that makes it that magical point? And I'll always start with Richard. So
I was just gonna go. I don't know. I just think it fits in, doesn't it? I mean, how long does a 3k game usually take us? A night, an evening?
Yeah.
And I think it gives you enough points to play with a few good options. You're probably always going to have a super heavy, which is fun. You're always going to have plenty of options to bring some of the fun stuff, along with those categories you always look to fill, like your objective grabbers or your anti-tank, like we said. It just gives you plenty of options, doesn't it? And it's a good number. Sits in that time slot easy. I think we have played 2K a couple of times, but like you said, that was sort of like on team games. And I think, like you said, that's just like a special occasion. But as a comparison, when you drop down to 2K, you do feel the hit with things you can take. Like your Lords of War slot's only 25% on your standard force org charts. So you do feel the hit, and then obviously if you have 3k, you have that number to play with a bit.
It's great if you've got a Warhound, fits in perfectly. What do you think about the sort of 3k limit?
I think you just called it there, Warhound. I think probably back in the day when the rule set became a thing in its own right, 3k was the lowest points level you could bring a Warhound, and the Warhound at that point might have been the Forge World's biggest kit. So it probably just became the default level in the game in Zeitgeist. But secondary to that, because not everybody's got a Titan, and I certainly wouldn't use mine a lot. But I think Dick nailed it, man. 3k is the perfect points level where you can bring stuff that you want to bring just for the hell of it, and plug all your tactical gaps for an all-comers like list, and yeah, just like have fun. Whereas like if you're talking about down to, I quite enjoy 1500 points games personally, right? But it's very limiting, and if you want to play a themed list at 1500, then your theme can really only be a horde of tacticals, because that's the only thing you've got enough points to really spam. But it's like, I feel like at the lower points levels, it opens up the same analogy that I used earlier on, the rock, paper, scissors effect, where if you're like, oh man, I'm really tight in points, like, but I want to have, say, 45 tax, that's 600 points straight out the bat, right? So that's like 40% of your army list gone. And then you might have to miss one of your checklist items, like you might miss anti-air, and then if the other guy brings a lightning, you're screwed, So like, because there's no little individual percentage limitations or brackets for like troops, HQ, elites and all that, you've just got the FOC, so you could like really, really go light on troops choices and then load up on elites or whatever, there's so many different combinations of units that you can fit in other than that 25% Lord of War limit.
Yeah.
So I feel like at smaller points levels, you have to make sacrifices somewhere, and then in a pickup game when you don't know what you're facing, if the other guy's like also had to make sacrifices, but if he's made a different sacrifice to you, the game can go really swingy. So I feel like 3K is like the perfect tipping point where it becomes like you can bring all your toys to fill any tactical niche and still have fun,
And that's, so we've had a good couple of comments just going back to what we were talking about before of sort of, if you're a World Eater player, then going for maximum slaughter still counts as a win. And I think that's where I hope the events that that we've put on to date sort of almost encourage that theme, because I've tried to make victory conditions not just be if I table you, I win. And I think that's where, if you get into that mindset at an event, right, you might be losing 20-0, but if you can get it to 20-5 by the end of the game, then those 5 points might actually make a difference to your faction because you've clawed that back. And I think that's where it can kind of make a difference. And then Stephen suggested there about like narrative mission objectives that are tailored to each legion. I think that's quite interesting I think it'd be quite hard to write them to all be fair when you've got 18 legions and 10 different forces potentially that you have to cater for. But it's that sort of giving everyone a personal objective is quite an interesting mechanic that could be worth exploring.
You've played it before, mate. At my event, we had asymmetric objectives on all the games except for the first game. So like, if you might remember in the second game, the bad guys were trying to kill the leaders, and the good guys were just trying to escape the trap that had been sprung on them. So like, you can do that, and somebody else said it before about the World Eaters going for slaughter, right? Yeah, so the World Eaters are going for slaughter, so just by having some of your guys alive at the end, you've almost denied them victory, right? And Steve's saying, White Scars go for the headshot, basically, but if you so the other guy might have an objective, but denying the White Scars objective by keeping his HQ alive, that's a win in its own little right. It's like small victories, but still a victory, even if they don't achieve the primary objective. So I quite like that, because it's fairly unlikely that in a battle the two opposing sides would have the exact same objective, but it's just, I know it's easy in an abstract rule set to plunk an objective down in the middle of the board, or between 3 and 6 objectives, like random piles of ammo, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And say, right, like just be close to them at the end of the game. But sometimes like mixing it up and forcing people to do things that like the other guy might think, wait a minute, that's a weird tactical decision. Why is he going over to that empty part of the table? Like, I think that quite interesting, because it makes people like second guess their own tactics as well on the fly.
Yeah, that is. I'm quite glad somebody brought that up. Actually, that's. I'm not going to try and veer too far off, but that idea of like unique objectives. So Kieran knows. I quite enjoy playing 9th edition, 40k. I've got a couple of mates who play it, and we sort of play it as like a beer and chips game.
Yeah.
And I don't know, the people in the chat probably know this, but when you do your mission selection in 9th Ed, you sort of get your deployment map, get your mission, you get your objectives, and you've always got a primary objective you go for. But what they've changed in 40k is you choose your secondary objectives. And I was going to mention this later, but this is, like I said, it's quite a good tie in here. That could be a really interesting addition to 30k, where you could have a list of secondary objectives you could tailor to your army. So World Eaters could go for kill points. Alpha Legion could go for taking out the HQ. Maybe certain armies want to go for a recon approach. They would take those objectives. So I think I think possibly that could be done. You know, Ninth Ed are doing it. I'm sure we could slot into 30k.
The card deck's cool. I'll show you. I don't know if you've got it. It's on my shelf, but there's other stuff here. I can't be looking for it. But the old 7-fed 40k card deck.
Yeah.
You would draw 3 per turn, and then you could either keep them to the next turn or shuffle them back in and have a do-over and get 3 new ones. They're pretty good because then you're scoring victory points on the fly on a turn-by-turn basis, as well as obviously the overarching win conditions for the game. So, I think that's good.
Yeah.
We thought that was going to be a very controversial topic, and I was waiting for the chat to say burn Richard at the stake, but seems it's gone down very well as a change that maybe we should be encouraging.
We bang on so much about 30k being a narrative-focused game and how it's a story, not a setting, whereas 40k is now a setting instead of a story. So, why wouldn't we bring that narrative into every game? I think it's a really good point, man. And we could do it as a community. We could do it. You know what I mean? Fan-made rules can be really, really bad or really, really good. You know, but I think if enough people get involved in testing them and working them out, then
absolutely
it's a good solution for everybody. You know.
So I'm not being rude. I've got a deck that I found. They did it at a Throne of Skulls, and I thought I might have had it to hand. I don't think I've got it, but it was Games Workshop printed it, and it was a 30k objective deck, and every Legion did have something. I should have looked that out before, but I'll see if I can find it and maybe put some of the I'll find it somewhere, maybe in the next stream, or I'll try and put it up on the Heresy.Scot page, and it did have exactly what you're talking about, and that must have been 7th edition. So
7th had the stratagem.
Yeah,
not stratagem, or no, objectives or something like that.
I think it was called the Open War Mission deck.
Aye, something like that.
So I've got something like that. So it does exist, and Games Workshop obviously sort of flirted with it, but never sort of made it into the rule set there.
The thing with those packs were you would have to generate new ones every turn. Whereas the way they do it now in 9th is you choose at the start of the game and they stick with you, and you build up victory points throughout the course of the game. But
I think that, because I imagine we're going to do sort of part 2 of this and go through the actual game rather than sort of, this is more about the sort of pre-game stuff. There's a viewpoint that doesn't not join in the chorus of people saying Richard's a genius. I think there is, and going to this point, and I've sort of not said your username because I massacred it last time. I'll just call you TBT. TBT has said not wanting objectives that kind of randomly spring up on you. I kind of like Adeptus Titanicus' style, where you don't have the same objective. You know the deck that they're drawn from or the table they're rolled on, but you could both have the same, you could both have different ones. I think
so that's sort of, sorry, I was just going to say that's sort of how 9th works. So you choose your objectives. That's your objectives. That's what, because every army's going to do the same thing. Do you know what I mean? Like a World Eater force wants to slaughter everything.
Yeah.
But a Recon Alpha Legion force, they're not fussed about slaughtering. They're fussed about recon headhunting.
So there's where Struan has made a really good point of saying your right of war could almost have something tied to it. And I think that's maybe the way of shoehorning it in. Maybe having, like, if you choose like we make jokes up here, and sorry if you do it, but the sort of veteran as troops and Terminators as troops is we kind of have a bit of a joke about it, because it is the easiest way to get into the game, because you can jump straight onto fairly expensive units, but it's like you go to events and 50% of people are running that rate of war, and you're kind of, oh, this is like the most elite armies that have ever been in the Heresy. And that, I think, tying something into that the pros and the cons of that list building maybe aren't as strong as it is on others, and that's where you add another element in, so you could make it more damaging, or take something like the recon one, which nobody runs. You could make that better, because it could be you don't actually have to win the main mission. You could get some victory points just by using your recons to kill squad leaders or something like that, if the rules for actually using sniper rifles were any good in 30k, which they're not. But you see what I mean?
I feel like they are all right. You get precision shots, they've got rending.
But precision shots, you just look outside it, so it doesn't make any sense as a. Well, sorry, I'm getting into the mechanics of the game. I'll step back from that abyss. So I think there's something in that though, and I would quite like to explore that. I think that's the sort of see what we can come up with to try and make a different experience at an event. That's where probably get Richard to do it, since he's the one that suggested it. So we've kind of got to that point where we're talking about what we would change. We've started doing it, and I'll kick off with, up here in Inverness, we don't tend to do a lot of 1v1s. And I don't think that the rule set does enough to cater for that. And I don't think that for even the missions, the allies chart, none of those are particularly well sort of catered for, is the only way I can sort of think to phrase it. So it's, if you take something like, when you look at the allies chart, most of the traitors don't get along, and most of the loyalists can at least tolerate each other. And I think it would be interesting to have a look at that when we play in our cliques, what impact that has on the game, and whether that actually, does it matter? We've always sort of played as, I've got my Space Wolves, you've got your Imperial Fists, our armies don't really talk to each other. I don't cast blessings and you don't cast blessings, because we've just always treated it as that sort of, I think it's the grey one, or the black one, where you're like, we're cool with each other, but we're not going to help each other. It'd be interesting to try and buff that up a bit, maybe, as a rule set. But I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, I'd agree with that. But on the same note, and I'm going to shoot myself in the foot here. Okay. You do kind of have to look at how other legions interact on that scale.
Oh, he's done it now. He's walked into my trap, everyone.
No, because I'm totally in agreement with you about this one. I know what you're going to say.
So,
Alpha Legion rules.
Yeah.
Are -1 to reserves.
Yeah.
How? I mean, that's a difficult one on a team game, because that does make a fair difference to your opponent's games. 1v1, 2v2, -1 reserves is pretty nasty. So I think you need to look. You would have to look. That has to be looked at.
I think that's the and again, we're kind of stealing content from later in the show, but the reserves aspect is something that's just a bit shite, and we'll come to that. I'll say no more on it for now, because I know it's on my list, and hopefully you would agree with me. But
that's another controversial issue.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Well, Shane, what do you think about that sort of? So
the Allies Matrix, I think I quite like how they interact differently. I do wish they were more open. I for the life of me, I can't understand why you can't get in each other's transport vehicles. I can't headcanon that at all. They're the exact same size and shape, wearing the same kit that's been manufactured on the same planet, but it's just been painted a different colour. But like the Rhino driver's like, whoa, mate, sorry, no yellow boys in here. You know what I mean? I just don't get it, man. I feel like for doubles games, yeah, the framework of the rules don't really support that, but you could just almost do it like a big Shattered Legions army, couldn't you? And just have one 4-sword chart. And rather than two people building distinct armies, then coming together, so on a 2v2 game, you're going to have 4-sword charts and potentially 4 Lords of War, and things could get really messy. But we seem to be sort of flogging a dead horse here, but if everybody just communicates before the game, it could be so much better. Like, my biggest bugbear with doubles matches is that if you get thrown into it and you've got like chalk and cheese armies, it's quite jarring. You're like, wait a minute, why are these two groups of guys like in the same battle sphere? You know what I mean? But if you collaborate, if you know you're doing 2v2, go back to the hypothetical situation where you say, right, come around on Friday for a game and it's going to be 2v2 doubles. And so you would pair off and you could talk to each other and say, right, let's go through that checklist of things we want to bring, but do it together rather than doing it in a silo. So the doubles experience could be much better if everybody was on board with the idea of making it better.
That's a good point in terms of what I've found, and it's not a criticism of any of the gamers, but I've found we tend to always want to do Loyalist v Traitor because that's what the game's about and that's the whole point and that's the style of the game. But I feel that you've got to kind of take into account the lists that are brought. So you almost want to get together, then look at the lists. And then you might find actually my Space Wolves would work much better with Gary's Iron Warriors because that would mean that the stuff that you've got isn't going to just get evaporated if me and Richard go together because he's got his militia. Like, I think there's an expectation to play as close to the fluff as possible, and it's got to be good versus evil. That's what it's all about. And I think when you start adding more and more armies and more collections to it, it becomes less of an issue for me because I think it's about having a fun game on that Friday night. And that's maybe where I come at it differently from other people. I wouldn't care I wouldn't be saying, oh, my Space Wolves are Traitor tonight, but I'd be saying, well, for the sake of a good game, let's make it we'll just ignore that bit of the story.
Simulation.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, yeah. So I think a big part of it is people don't want to compromise their own list for the greater good either, which people probably wouldn't admit that openly. But like a lot of folk are like, oh man, well, I've just painted, I don't know, my Primarch, so I want to bring my Primarch. Like, stop being a dick, let me use my Primarch. You know what I mean? So people, like, if they know they're playing doubles but they don't want to make any concessions on what they're bringing to suit their partner, whether openly or like covertly, they kind of dig their heels in and bring what they want, and then the armies don't really sync up. That can sort of ruin the experience.
And what so going back to that, we kind of I gave Richard a light time there. I think there is something in that the debate of the Alpha Legion, and I'm not picking on them because they do have that one ability that puts them ahead above everyone else. That -1 is really strong because if you're playing a 10v10,
Absolutely.
you could get 10 people with -1 to the reserves. But to give them their dues, I think that would be, you've got to give them something else then if you're going to sort of look into that. And that's where I think the rule system kind of lets armies down because it is trying to say, the Alpha Legion are sneaky, this is what they do, you're going to have to use this sometime. You can't, like, to build an Alpha Legion list without relying on that will just make them generic Marines, and that's a bit dull for you to use them. So it is something that I guess maybe we almost want to try and construct some sort of multiplayer system. I would mean that'd be one side of A4 rather than, I'm not trying to build a whole new rule set, no way. But just something that kind of covers that maybe.
Yeah, you can even say, like, and just to use, we're not picking on you, Dick, but just because everybody's used so far. A doubles match, if one side's got Alpha Legion, you could just say, right, well, they've infiltrated one of the enemy, and the rules affect that one enemy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the most really simple, fairest way to do it. Is that, like, although the two armies are fighting against the other two armies, but like the pre-battle prep, your little battle force, because it's such a small portion of the Alpha Legion's greater Legion force, have only got influence over one set of enemies. You could sort that out pretty easily, I think. But the rules, they don't scale well They don't really, do they?
No.
Even if you're looking at like the FOC with like the primary detachment, the allied detachment, and the Lord of Wars, like there's a definite cap on when it becomes a burden rather than a tool, you know.
And what point does that, like, if you take a force organisation chart and you fill it with everything except 5 troops, when do you get a new one? Like, that's the sort of, the game is clearly not encouraging you to play those massive games.
It used to be 3,000 points, didn't it? It used to be if you then played over 3k, you got a second one. When Heresy used 40k, I believe that was in 5th and 6th Fed. That was an actual rule.
Yeah, it was definitely. Yeah.
And obviously when like 30k V1 Red Book came out, there's no mention of it anywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, like at a certain point, the FOC just falls flat on its arse, and you might as well just have a bring your whole collection, and we'll just have a brawl, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Going back to team games, what we actually really want is a Triumph and Treachery set.
I don't know what that is.
Okay, you don't want to play with me then.
Don't play with Richard. So in fantasy, there was, and I very little dabble of fantasy, but Richard is basically a game system where it's every man for themselves, but you can team up, and that's the triumph angle. But you can then betray your partners, which is the treachery part, and it's got cards in it, and there's cards like where someone would be about to charge Richard, and he just put a card down. It's like you can't. And it just stops you doing it. There's nothing you can do about it.
And like you can, it's like up to 5 players. So that card, even though it's not my turn to go, maybe you're charging Kieran. I could just be like, I want Kieran's unit to live.
Yeah.
No, Welshie, you're not charging. Just stuff like that.
It is such bullshit. It's so funny to watch it. It's actually like I'm very rarely, and I'm sorry if this makes people sad and disappointed in me. I don't really watch battle reports and stuff, but I would sit and watch Triumph and Treachery as a game because it is so funny when someone is like, it's basically the game where I've seen the most people on their knees with their t-shirt over their head and their dice getting flung about the room, because it's such nonsense when you're like, you only have to do one thing to win, you're about to do it, and in that dickhead, you're not even messed with the whole game, just puts this card down. It's like, no, you can't do that. And then you just like, you're just fucked over by it. And then, even more stupid, you can just give all your coins to people, so you earn points as the game goes, and if you want to, you can just be like, here's all my coins, just to mess with the game. It's such nonsense. But that's kind of, I guess that's that narrative sort of, like, you could use that to make a really narrative rememberable, that's not a word, a game you will not forget.
I mean, sorry.
On you go.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, joking aside, Triumph and Treachery, you know, it's about it's about backstabbing essentially, but at the core of the game, it's a really good rule set and the way it works. So maybe something like that for Heresy could work. But
maybe
I think there's something in there about if you did it for like the traitor players, if you were playing a multiplayer game, that could be quite fun. Like you could end up having like one traitor player actually wins overall because they've been mucking about, like, and they've played loads of cards down that ruins it for everyone else. But anyway, that's kind of digressing. So some of the comments, so I can bring them in. The transport thing has gone down. I think that's people are agreeing with you, Welshie. But then Jody makes a good point of if you were playing, say we're playing a 6,000 point game, 3k each, we're playing doubles. Could you almost, if you did that thing that you've suggested, Welshie, of organising in advance, could you say, well, I'm not going to run a Lord of War, but you can have my sort of 25% equivalent? I think that's, maybe there's something in that in terms of...
Yeah, why not, man? Bring a ruler.
Rather than every person turning up with their 3k that's been built in isolation, maybe that would be quite interesting to experiment with and see if that would make for better armies. But I think it could also go the other way, and you could end up with like, oh, they've turned up with nothing but these horrible complementary units that are just going to steamroll the opposition. But yeah, I think there's something in that we would need to.
So what you've just done there, though, is you've came full circle back to the start of the episode where we're talking about list tailoring. So like the key is communication and collaboration between everybody involved in the game, not just the people on the same team.
And there's so again, TBT as he's getting called. Civilization has bonuses that are for yourself and for your team. An Age of Empires, sorry. So there's something, yeah, I think there could be something in that as a maybe
Yeah.
traitors overall get something and loyalists get something. And then Struan, could you reverse the Alpha Legion trick with a single loyalist Damocles Rhino? Yeah, I guess that's where this
Yeah.
sort of nonsense where no, you can't get in my Rhino because you've got a different coloured armour on. Like it doesn't. If you
Yeah.
could use that, that's maybe where we've not looked at it enough because we've all. I mean, I'm not. Don't get me wrong. The Alpha Legion have that ability. It's in the book. You've got to play it. And it's up to us to come up with a compromise that's good. But you could argue and say, well, the Damocles shouldn't just apply to me because it's a big satellite dish and I should be able to bring in. He's not technically my ally because I've not got him allied in. He is another force alongside me, sort of thing. So there's something in that maybe. If one of you want to say otherwise, then fire on.
Yeah, there's loads of viable solutions being proposed.
Yeah.
You know,
Should be writing these down. I'm going to have to watch this back now.
if only it was some kind of electronic system recording.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm recording it, but that means I've got to listen to myself for 2 hours. One of the things
You get to listen to us.
Yeah, I'll just put it on mute when it's you talking. One of the things we haven't talked about is the table size, and I personally feel that a 6x4 is probably just about right for a 3K game, but when we get into the 2v2 or more than 3,000 points, you're getting into the not only needing to be wider, but like longer and wider. I don't know. You don't want to just make it 7x4, 8x4, 9x4. I think you almost want to add in Heresy a little bit of distance between the two forces because there's a couple of units, knights in particular, that technically can charge in turn one. And I would like to see maybe a little bit more of a gap between the forces. So what do you think on that?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It does feel too tight at that points level. Now, I'm sorry for doing this, right? But you know when we were talking about point sizes, right? I was looking through the rule book because I know it mentions point sizes.
It does.
And it actually says in the rule book the missions are intended for games with 2 players of 1,750 and 3,500.
Okay.
So that sort of does answer the question about games geared for 2v2, that the missions probably aren't suited to that, because that rule book's looking specifically at 3,500 and 2 players. But this also does tie in with the table size, because then that means the table size is 72 by 48 for a 1v1.
Yeah.
And it does feel too tight with 2 players. So, yeah, I think you do want more distance between players, and you do want it wider when you're up at that scale.
Even in 1v1s, I would maybe want the table to be a little bit wider.
So there's a limit though, right? And not to be a surplus here, but there's a limit to how much leaning and grabbing you can do.
Yeah.
Which is why it's 4 foot wide, realistically, right? I would love to play in a big deep table like 8x6 and have some real manoeuvring and like actually have my long range units operate at the fringes of their range.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, have my troops manoeuvring around where they're not always in range of everything in the other guy's army. But the physical limitation to that is our arms, basically, unfortunately. So I feel like there's probably, unless you've got a massive table where you can have a little island in the middle that you say, oh, this is a mountain or a canyon, it's impassable terrain, but you can like crawl under and stick your torso through like a turret so you can still reach all your units, you know what I mean? It's like your arms are the limit there to how big your table can be, and you're not going to spend hours and hours painting your models and then push them around with one of those things that you see at casinos. I don't know what they're called, sorry, but you know, the little daft brushes that they use to collect the chips and stuff.
I think
like
there's a bit of a going just on that. Most people would say like the World War II things that you used to push the planes about. So you've gone in with casino. It'd be interesting to explore that. And why do you think casino?
Because we used to have a pretty big gambling problem. What?
That's how he's afforded his
know.
heresy.
When you were in your early 20s, did you not like just go mad at the bookies? No.
Aye, on
Get
accumulators.
Well,
Anyway,
everyone in here did, you know.
Yeah. Sorry, just to finish off what I was going to say. See the table size of 6x4 for a 1v1. I'm quite happy with that size. I think it's all right. I think it gives you options for your basic troops and vehicles to either get in close and within range within a couple of turns, or gives you enough room to maneuver out of the way.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying about like some of the super heavies, like knights. They could charge turn one, but I think that's a rule issue with the super heavy itself, the unit.
Yeah. Plus, only if you let them.
Yeah, that's if you're right at the front of your
because
deployment.
We know they've still got that 24-inch threat bubble.
Yeah.
So, like, if you just don't go within 24 inches of them, and on turn one they can't charge if you don't deploy within charge range.
Yeah.
So, you can mitigate that by just being savvy on deployment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that's fair enough. So I've got this is kind of more bureaucracy than anything. So one of the things I really, and I'd be amazed if anyone says otherwise, is I think more than anything this game just needs a really good tidy up where you have one book that has nearly everything. Well, not one book, because Forge World are never going to do that, but where they really have to update every single red book, and they have to update the rule book to have all the things you're allowed to use in Heresy. So, for example, it's quite glaring that void shield generators don't exist anymore. I just get the feeling that they didn't like how cheap they were and decided not to put them in the rulebook because they didn't want everyone to run one as their fortification, because it was a cheap way of getting 3 void shields. And that's fair enough, but you could have priced them out of most people's reach, or for me, I own 2 because I got one of the resin ones and I got one of the plastic ones because I think they're quite weird looking things that were quite fun to have on the table, and they're good terrain pieces.
Yeah, they're cool terrain pieces.
But I don't. When you actually go through the fortification section in the Heresy rulebook, it's a bit sparse. There's not really a lot in it, and there's a lot of things there that are like, if you want to use the Shrine of the Aquila thing, which you can't buy anymore. I don't think anyway.
Yeah.
So it's kind of time
anymore
for a really big clean-up of all of those wee nuance things that haven't made it in the PDFs on the website. I've not bought. I've got a mech army, but I don't own the rulebook because I'm not buying a red book when I've been waiting for like a year for that red book to be rewritten, because I just know it'll happen the day after I buy the bloody book.
The thing is, Forge World have totally shit the bed, haven't they? In the last few years, they feels like they don't care, and maybe that's because there's a new edition coming, hopefully. But let's just call a spade, man. Like they've not supported the game properly.
Yeah. See, going on about tidying it up. Just going off the back of that, something I'd like them to tidy up actually is the Panoply War. That's a big one for me. We mentioned it, I think, last episode. Maybe it'd be cool to cover those things, those little super heavies that you don't see often, but a lot of people don't know where you get the rules for them. Yeah. So, like Macarius, Crassus,
you need
Minotaur.
To get the old, what is it, Montca or Kuyon? That's the most up-to-date set of rules for all the Baneblade variants. And then Imperial Armour Apocalypse 2, which has been out of print for about 11 years. That's where the various rules are. So that's a cracking point, man, because those models are lovely.
There was
and they're named explicitly. Sorry,
I keep talking over you there, but the fortification one as well, like that was at one point you were allowed to use that. And there was a book, what was that? Like, I can't remember the name of it, but there was one that was about 30 pages for about 20 quid, the book. But it was,
Planet Strike.
No, it's got a picture of it. It's got an Imperial Fist on the cover. I can't remember the name of it, but I can picture the cover.
I can picture that as well.
But anyway, so I think they need a good tidy up. But this is my, get ready everyone, strap yourself in, controversial Kieran opinion. What I would like them to do is to also revisit some of the stuff that they used as stopgaps. And I've already said this to Richard, and he never replied to me, so he's obviously hoping that it's not something that happens. I don't feel like the solution for Malcadors was appropriate for Solar Auxilia, because I can run them as heavy support choices, but now they're utter rubbish. So when they tried to fix Space Marine players running two of them, driving them forward as fast as they can to blow up and cause D damage everywhere, which was the reason that they did that change, I think that my solution would have been to put the points up on the Malcadors to the point where they become less useful. And I would like to see a situation where, because when Heresy came out, they didn't have options, didn't have a Xiphon, so Lightnings were allowed. I actually think the Lightning's too good for Space Marines, and I would like to see that go up by like a stupid amount of points, 100 points more, to try and force people not to use them unless they want to play fluffy. And I would include Malcadors in that. I would include the like Baneblade chassis tanks in there as well, because they were only there until the Space Marines got their actual Space Marine options. But I'm prepared for a lot of backlash on that. I'm not sure people would agree.
I would have to.
I agree completely. I love a Malcador. They're such great looking models, and I agree that they should have just priced them out, like you're saying, points wise, on the Space Marine list. Just leave them alone for Solar Auxilia and Militia. You know.
No, I don't agree with either of you. Sorry. No, like just charging more points isn't the answer, because all it does is create a points inflation system, whereby then suddenly things that are almost analogous to those units have to cost the same amount of points. And I'm not implying that there's a slippery slope there, because I know that's a fallacy, but like just upping their points isn't the answer. Making their rules more fair is the answer.
Well,
like, so the Malcador, like that old thing about suicide Malcadors, I never seen it or heard it until the nerf happened, and then I found out that's why the nerf happened. Why didn't they just like rewrite the rules that, rather than have like an unstable reactor that went catastrophic like a Super Heavy did, why didn't they just say, oh, by the way, man, these are pure ancient shit generators, like they're diesel engines for an ancient age, they don't explode like that, they just get wrecked. And then suddenly you've still got a Super Heavy vehicle, right? And it still costs the points that it costs based on its efficacy on the table offensively and its survivability. But like, you can't do a pure gimmick tactic with it by charging it into the middle of the enemy and basically self-destructing it. I know, not actually self-destructing it, but allowing it to be killed. I don't think upping the points was the answer. Changing the rules is the answer, but they swung that pendulum too far and nerfed them too hard.
But how would you then?
I think it's sorry.
No, you go.
No, I was just going to say, I think a big part of it as well was, as Kieran said, they were in there from the get-go as fillers. Yeah. So the Space Marines don't really need them now in the list. But if you just took them out, people would moan, and players will moan. But
that's fine. Yeah. Like, I agree that the Space Marines don't need them, but as a unit, they exist, and they were very clearly built for the ground up, both visually and in their rules, as a super heavy unit. So like, making them not super heavy was totally stupid, because now those guns have got a mix of ordnance and regular weapons that they can't fire now. It's like they've just made them useless for the sake of like preventing one daft gimmick, where they could have just actually put a wee bit of brain power behind it and mitigated that gimmick with like actual elegant rules writing. You know? The lightning example as well, I feel like a fully kitted out one being about 255 is probably enough, because you can shoot it down before it even fires a shot. If you're smart at list building stage and bringing out the air unit, you know, it can be intercepted like at the end of its own movement phase before it gets to fire. Or you can make it jink. That like, there's so many other counters to lightnings that making them cost 350 points isn't even on my radar, to be honest with you. But we can agree to disagree on that.
No, I'm not.
I feel like that would be too far.
My opinion is based on purely on that sort of fluffy, like, I don't know why they gave Malcadors to Space Marines other than it's just to fill in something cool. So if you take something like a Lightning, if they took away those missiles, would that be the rules rewrite that you would be fine with?
I mean, yeah, I suppose cracking penetrators are a bit too reliable, right? You know, like I believe they're strength 8, AP2, and armor bane. Is that correct?
Strength 8, AP1, armor bane.
Right, okay. So
I think it's AP1. Yeah.
So they're going to roll, on average, they're going to get about 15 on their AP roll. So yeah, that's too good. Maybe if they were like strength 6 armor bane or strength 10 but not armor bane, you know?
So what about though, because that would be similar to what you've said, only for Marines, because personally, Solar Auxilia hat on, I find that they lack. If you don't have a vehicle, you're not hurting any tanks because they have crack grenades at best. They don't have melta bombs.
Yeah.
Their wee men are not really built for running up the board and charging into tanks and slapping grenades on them anyway. So I'd be interested in that sort of. I think you're probably less knee jerk than me. I think that sort of the solution is saying, all right, well, Space Marine ones just don't get Kraken Penetrator, and Space Marine Malkadors are relics of a relic age. Might be more. You've kind of convinced me a bit with that, and I can see some of the folk in the chat having sort of similar opinions, of saying trying to
With
change.
your
On you go.
Auxilia and having all your anti-tank mounted on tanks, that is a design flaw on behalf of the rules writers as well. You should have some kind of infantry unit, and they'll still be human. They'll still be like 3 profile in terms of like weapon skill, ballistic skill, strength, toughness. You know what I mean? So they still won't be as good 1v1 as a Marine. But if they've got the kit and the delivery system to get them near a tank, either say you can get a melta gun squad and you can give them, I don't know, a Dracosan that they can jump out of and melt a tank, or a termite or something. If you've got a guys who have got the right tools for the job and the right way to get them to the right place for the job, then that would fill the gap more so than like letting them have your lightnings equipped with missiles that the Space Marines can't have for whatever reason. Because why would the elite of the Emperor's armies not have this missile that the human forces that they're serving alongside do thematically?
So that's what I'm kind of getting at though, in terms of maybe that's where your argument starts to fall away a wee bit. So thematically, you're right, but I would say for game's sake, giving them lightnings to the Space Marine list with Kraken Penetrators is probably just too good. In my opinion, I think it's too good for.
Krakens are too good as well, and as somebody said it in the chat that they're fine as they are, but they're far too good as an alpha strike weapon. You can fire 4 of them at once. And like because of the way a 2d6 roll works, you're going to score like 7 or more, like the vast majority of the time. You know what I mean? Which then added on to your 8, you're going to score a 15, and the highest armor value on a non-super heavy is a 14. So you're almost guaranteed to penetrate it. Yeah. And with AP1, you've got a pretty good chance of exploding it in one hit. So, I feel like if Kraken Penetrators are a thing, they need to be a thing on every lightning that's available to every army. Where it's like Marines, Mech, I don't know if Mech can get them, but just for talking's sake, if Mech could get them, they should also have access. And Solar Auxilia and Auxilia. So like, if you view lightnings as a problem...
Well, you've disappeared. Is he still there? Am I still there?
Yeah, you can have those toys, but you can't. You know what I mean?
That just went a bit weird for me, that stream.
Yeah.
As long as everyone's still there.
I thought my internet had cut off.
I got panicky there thinking of he's hung up on me because I disagreed with him. No, I can kind of see what you're saying, and I don't want it like we're just going to go around in circles because we don't have the luxury of time on our side there. I think that sort of I personally wouldn't mind. I think my compromise, instead of just pricing them to bits out of the game, is to sort of say, well, okay, well, Space Marines just don't get some of the options there, so not to try and negate, because the missiles all look the same anyway on a lightning, doesn't matter. I think you'd start to see that sort of power creepy, not win at all cost, because I'm not saying people who own lightnings and are Space Marine players are win at all cost at all, but I think you would start to see that sort of side come out of people when you say, you know what, Space Marines don't get to use Kraken Penetrators anymore, and you see the people being like, oh, my lightning's much less useful now.
Yeah.
And that achieves the same thing that I'm trying to say potentially by knocking about the points. Anyway,
to be fair, you could probably just take the electromagnetic bombs and still probably one-shot a Spartan.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, maybe Nox, it's got 5 hull points, but you could do a pretty good job on it. You know, it's like... I don't think I've ever seen a lightning without Kraken Penetrators, let's put it that way.
Yeah,
and if the entire player community of a game system thinks that there's only one viable option, then that identifies it as a problem with that option.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So we'll say that and move on. So we're not that far away from what I would say is the sort of break point, but I personally think that you should just get to pick your warlord trait. I don't think that's something that makes any sense. That if your army is entirely shooty, your warlord trait becomes something like +1 combat res. I just think that's a
or
bit.
like randomly you can deep strike when you've got yeah. No, I fully agree.
I agree. That's some, again, you'll probably hear me do this a lot, but that's something I really like about 9th edition.
Yeah.
Where you choose your warlord trait.
Yeah, man.
And even onto, I know this isn't relevant, but like psychic powers.
That's
You choose your
next on
psychic
my
powers.
list.
Yeah,
But,
man. On the same
but
page here too.
it just makes logical sense. Do you know what I mean?
I just don't
Yeah, you spend so many
understand.
hours like carefully and meticulously planning your army, what
Yeah.
units you're going to have, what specific models are going to have, what colour you're going to paint them, what markings are going to have. You spend like thousands of hours building up this narrative for your army, but then you leave like the personality of your warlord up to a D6 roll immediately before the battle. That's crazy. You know, it's so stupid. You know what I mean? Like it's especially in a narrative game. I could maybe see their point if it was like if the whole game was aimed at like just pick up and play. But when the game is specifically like geared towards a story, then why don't you make those warlord traits and psychic powers definitely part of the story?
Yeah.
To go on psychic powers, I think you should be able to choose them, but they should all have different point costs.
Well, I think they should do that with warlord traits.
Yeah,
so I think the best era for me in theme was the 5th edition Space Wolf Codex, where you could give your Wolf Lord sagas, and it's like Saga of the Bear, you get Eternal Warrior. Saga of the, I don't know, just say Bloody Claw, I don't know what it was called. And then you would be saying that he gets Rage. And that then you paid the points for it. If you priced it appropriately, I don't think there's a single warlord that would be a problem. Like, and that goes for thousands on psychic powers, right? My guy is the king of the fiery guys, whatever they're called. But his powers are all shitty telepathy. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't, like, you should be saying, no, I'm making a themed army where my wolf priest is the guy that's been like conjuring up portals for us to teleport through. Oh, but he doesn't get the teleport spell. Well, that's crap then, isn't it? Like, I don't understand how we can get this far into a narrative conversation and then you just sort of stumble over the warlord trait right before the game begins. I think that's really, really shit.
I think that's just an overhang from the old 40k rules, really.
Yeah.
I think if they rewrote them properly, maybe I could see them changing that. Definitely.
You'd even remember it though, because like Jody said there, how many games do you get to the end of the game and you go, oh shit, I forgot my warlord causes fear, or oh no, I forgot I've got that +1 combat. And that might even be the same one. I think it's +1 combat res and fear. I don't know why I'm picking on that one, but you get to the end of the game and you think, oh bollocks, like I've not even used my warlord trait, and that would have saved that unit from running away.
That's why you should take Iron Warriors, because there's just one.
Depends if you take a character or not, I guess. But yeah, I think that's the change I would like to maybe even try it. That might even be the next event we can try it and see. Because I don't, like Stephen has said, I don't understand why your warlord trait changes between games at narrative events as well.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Like, why is like, oh yeah, so before lunch, this guy was standing on a teleport pad pre-battle because he rolled like Voidwalker, but after lunch he's a child of terror. Like, what? Where was he born before the first battle? You know what I mean? It's stupid. It really sucks my immersion dry when I have to like go, oh fuck yeah, warlord traits. And then everybody's the same. I don't think I've ever played anybody who's like been like, oh yeah, I'm really hyped to roll for this warlord trait today. You know what I mean? Everybody just sees it as at best an afterthought, because like if you've not used a character that's got a fixed trait, which tends to be pretty useful, like a bespoke one for like Kier Valen's one's really good. Or like there's other characters that either let you pick or have a fixed trait, and they're always like slightly better than a vanilla one. You know what I mean? So like I've only ever experienced people playing those characters with bespoke traits who actually like remember them and make use of them, and everybody else is like, oh yeah, I've rolled the dice.
No, he disappeared again. Either my internet's going or something's going wrong with this stream, because that's twice that's done that. Oh, I don't know what's going on there. It wasn't very happy with me. Oh, are you still
Are we
there?
back?
Yeah,
Are we
that's
back?
weird. I don't know if that could be something with this streaming thing. Anyway, I think that is the point that we should take a break. We've gone on a little bit over where I thought we would be. Not a bad thing. It's good to have a chat. But I'll pause the stream for now, and then we'll come back after the break. We'll give us 5 minutes to go for the toilet if you can hear me. As long as you can hear me, that's all that matters. But I'll put it on to a break, get another drink, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about when you actually turn up at the person's house where the game's going to go. So just a 5 minute break, and then we'll be back.
Are we
think it's the Discord. Can people see us in the Twitch? You won't get very much of Richard at the moment, because otherwise we're waiting for Scott to drop back in. So hopefully you can see us. Let me know if you can or can't.
Hopefully. Oh, someone.
Tim can see us, but can you see us moving? Because that seems to be frozen on what I've got in front of me.
Scott, you're really enjoying this era of...
Whoop, sorry. Let me just mute this.
Yeah, something is strange going on with that. But we can just go, what I'll do, I don't know if you know how to do it, Richard. Let's switch just to oh, it's working now, magically. Although I've got a big thing in front of my head until Scott rejoins. Can you see us now? Right, video's back.
Video back, yeah.
I'll just leave this across my forehead so I don't have to touch anything. It also can maybe hide that hairline a little bit if I just duck there. So Scott is having issues with his internet. He came back for about 3 seconds and jumped out, but we'll carry on, give him a chance to get back. We don't want to sort of sitting on the break screen for too long, so just bear with us a little bit there. One of the things that I forgot and was rather selfish with was I just said my bit and then just went on to the break, and Richard would like to throw something into the mix that we've not talked about, so fire on, Richard.
Yeah, so thank you, Kieran. I think this could possibly be a controversial one, but we'll see what the audience says. So, surprise, surprise, something from 9th edition I would possibly like to see. I really like stratagem cards, and I think that could really add a nice flavour to our game. So if anyone doesn't know, I'm sure you do anyway, but so you get a certain amount of command points when you play 9th edition, same as 8th edition, and you spend those command points on stratagem cards, which give you in-game bonuses for a turn or for a unit, or let you reroll a dice roll. And I think they could be really good in our game and add an extra narrative value to our armies. So if you could imagine, you could have a card for the World Eaters player where they increase the Butcher's Nails. So, you could get an extra strength on your unit or an extra attack. Maybe for... Oh, he's back.
Maybe.
I'll wait and see. No. Maybe for like White Scars, you could boost your bikes. Maybe that could be a command point spend on your turn. I think it's something you would have to look into. It wouldn't be an easy transition, but I don't know what you think about that, Kieran.
I think there's something in just having a bit of a... This is really annoying in front of me, but whatever. I think there's something about having a something that can interrupt something. Like if the game is going really badly for you, then there's something you could maybe throw into the mix to kind of try and salvage something. Like I think that's where the game doesn't really have a mechanic for when it's going badly to keep one player interested, and I think that is kind of a flaw overarching in the sort of Games Workshop games, where it's like it's already 6 turns long on average probably, and sometimes it either feels like you've done nothing in 6 turns and you're barely engaged and you've kind of just danced around it, or sometimes it feels like you're clinging on for dear life, and maybe something that can, I don't know, maybe there is maybe not a stratagem card, but maybe something that would, that sort of command points thing that has been in the previous games, if it was done properly and wasn't done like 7th edition where it became ridiculous, where you ended up with the same, like, I run my formation and it means I win before you even get to put your models down. Like, that's where I'd be worried about it.
Oh yeah. No, I'm totally against formations. Totally against them. I'm just meaning, just an extra rule for your unit. You spend a point, boom. Because they do it in Adeptus Titanicus, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't had the opportunity to play that yet, but I definitely think it's the way they're going to go. It's something I'd like to see change, actually. So yeah,
I think that's kind of rather than stratagem cards. And again, we're kind of jumping into another episode here, but I kind of feel, and again, maybe this is my controversial opinion morning again, You Go, I Go is a better game system overall, I think. I think that is
Yeah.
fairer for
Yeah.
everyone involved, that you
Mhm.
actually get to do something rather than, it feels very, like the psychic phase will be something I moan about a lot when
Mhm.
we get to that. But that is the phase that I would use as an example where the game is really shit, because you just sit there and wait and get told what you're to do. And you do that through the whole game. But I think when you get to that phase in particular, if you're playing someone who has a Thousand Suns army, you do
Mhm.
end up in a situation where you're like, okay, I've got to roll more saves. I've got to roll more saves. There's nothing I can do about it anymore because I've not got any dice left. But I don't know. I think that's something. Maybe there's something in that in terms of the need to kind of flavour your army a bit more.
Mhm.
But maybe it could be something you pay points for. Like it doesn't have to automatically be every army gets them. Maybe you take
Yeah.
200 less points in your army and you get access to something like that.
If it's done right, I think the more flavour and narrative we can add, the better. At the end of the day.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It seems
Yeah.
they've gone down a bit of a split opinion in the chat there, so you've not offended everyone anyway. So we're still waiting for Welshie to come back and share his opinion, but we've done the same thing where we've picked some people that we've seen stuff this last couple of weeks, so we'll just work through them. So Richard, I think you've got one that you've put forward here, so
Yeah.
just fire away.
Are you putting it up or?
It is up. It should be up.
Oh wait, sorry. Hold on, because I've just.
It's definitely up for me. It's the Mechanicum guy.
No, I know. I just closed it down by accident. Sorry. Yeah, so this is I guess it's Horus Heresy _Paints, but it's HH Paints. I don't know who this guy is. He's obviously Scottish. You can see the location tag. But his Magus Dominus for his Dark Mechanicum. Yeah, I absolutely love this. There's so much character to it. I'll be honest, I don't know all the kits he's used, but I love the little bits like his wee face, the tentacles, and I guess the what are they called? Is it a Skiliax? Skillax?
I wouldn't dare pronounce it.
Yeah, Mechanicum models. They're like servitor things, I think. Obviously, he's used that body. Obviously, changed the face and added the extra tentacles, I think. But I just think that looks great. It looks so grimdark as well.
It looks like that is Andrew McPherson, who is Raven Guard, is who he's brought to some of the previous
series. Yeah. Now I know what you're talking about. Yeah, no, I really like that. So go give him a follow. If you don't, I only noticed it this week. So, and you'll see he's got other ones as well. Some really cool Mechanicum stuff. Really nicely painted, all of it. I'm particularly jealous of his termite because it looks amazing, and you know how much I love a termite, Kieran.
Well, thank you very much. We'll skip Welshies for now and come back. So, I have opted for our very own James. It's fair to say he's maybe not flying through his models at the moment because he does like one over a extended period of time. But I particularly like this sort of conversion he's gone for. Anyone who'll buy like a 20 quid HQ kit and then chop it to bits gets a nod from me. I think that's a good use of bits on his. He wants it to be an armistice for his Emperor's Children project, which is why I've got the second picture there. I think he's done quite a good job on, like, there's just things that you don't. I think he in particular is quite good at doing the subtle conversions that you wouldn't know he'd actually done anything. Like the eye lens on that guy on the left there. That's a Mark IV eye lens that he's actually taken off the helmet and strapped it onto the plastic Mark III helmet. And it just looks like that was how it came off the sprue.
Yeah.
So you're sort of like, he's not really done anything to that model, but it's actually like the effort that he's put into getting wee bits like that is impressive, I think.
Sorry.
No, on you go.
I was just going to say, it's sort of the same thing. His little conversions like that, they're not overbearing. They're just the right, nice little touch a lot of the time. Like that little eyepiece. It's subtle, but it's perfect. It looks nice. The legs, the pack, the whole lot. Sometimes I think people can over-convert. So no, it's really nice.
Right, give me 2 seconds. I think Welsh maybe having an issue in terms of he's done something to his Discord account maybe.
Locked himself out.
Yes, I think James has done a bang up job on that guy. And
Yeah.
again, we're trying to sort of showcase that Scottish Heresy scene. And I've got I try and just people that I've seen stuff that I think is really, really cool as well. So obviously being a Space Wolf buff, anyone who's taken a bit of time to do a number on those Variger gets a nod for me, and they're quite inspirational in terms of where I want to go with mine. Well, I'm going a bit lighter on mine because I'm following the Betrayal, Burn and Prospero official scheme, but I think he's done a good job on that, and I think that's kind of made me think that kit's maybe not as bad as everyone seems to think. And then on the guy on the right, you've probably seen his Alpha Legion. And he started doing these white scars, and I'm still not 100% sure if they're meant to be Alpha Legion in disguise, because the sort of the turquoisiness.
Because he's got the subtle shade of turquoise, doesn't he?
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm wondering if that's what it's meant to be. But no, I'm not sure. I think it'd be interesting to sort of have a conversation with him about what he's done with them and just see if it is, because that's like, I think the HQs there in particular are really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. They pop out, don't they?
Yeah.
No, I really rate them. It's interesting as well. He does all his stuff in oils, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And that's something I've not tried.
So there's me having problems again. So hopefully you dropped out a wee bit there, Richard. So I don't know if it's me. If as long as nobody else in the stream, am I having an issue? When it freezes, is it just Richard that freezes, or is it me as well? And are we still here? Since I've not seen a comment for a little while.
Are you back?
Just Toad. Okay, so something's going on. Yeah, I'm here. I was just going to chat. Sometimes there must be something going on. Anyway, we'll have to plow on. It's like we're not that far off. Like if he can rejoin, then great. Richard, if you can get, if you want to drop into just voice and see if that makes any difference, then feel free. If you can hear me, I'll even put it in the chat just so you can actually. Hide the Toad. So hopefully you can see that. Don't blame me for this time. I don't think it's me. So I'll just show you what Welsh you had anyway. Hopefully we'll get back in, and this is a test of my ability to keep it all going. But he just wanted to show off this one where he just thinks that just looks proper grimdark with the way that that robot is just standing there stoically. And I agree. I think it's a brilliant model. I think the weathering on it's brilliant. I think that makes a big difference can elevate a model when you do weathering right. Not that I ever do weathering at all because I never paint. But I think that's that's someone who's done it just spot on there of making a good job of using that really old Forge World kit.
Yeah, I really rate that. Yeah.
You've been there the whole time, that's good. Well, if you want to go into voice chat, just only voice, if that helps whatever's going on, then feel free to try that. Okay, so we've covered stratagems, we've covered sort of getting to the point where you're ready for a game, and now moving on to that sort of, you turn up at the house, you bring your models into the room. So I'll start by saying I think the the terrain setup is one of the worst written bit in the rulebook. It seems really negative tonight, actually. That's what I was thinking during the break. I'm not wanting to come across as if I hate the game, because I love Heresy, and don't get me wrong at all. I actually really, really like the game, otherwise I wouldn't be doing this. But I think there's some little bits in the game system that are just strange. And when you actually read how you set up the board, you're meant to do sort of turnabout of putting terrain down. And I don't know anyone that does that, because if you're at an event, they've probably organised the terrain how they want it. And if you're playing in someone's house, the chances are I would get the terrain set up because I want to save time so we can actually play the game.
Mm-hmm.
So
you can't. Sorry.
I'm not cutting out, hopefully, as long as people can hear me.
You can't die there. Yeah, I mean, there is an alternative option for setting up terrain in the rulebook.
He's disappeared on me as well.
Do you know what I'm on about?
I don't know what you're on about because you keep disappearing. Try turning off your video. It's on Discord.
Right, hold on then.
You just turn off the video thing.
Hold on.
See if that makes any odds, so that I don't have to sort of panic station. Right. Now I won't be able to tell if he's there at all or not now, so that's brilliant.
Right, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Let's hope you don't drop out.
Right, okay. I can see you moving quite nicely. Actually, I've got a full screen of you now as well. It's even better.
Lucky everyone.
Now, I'll go tell Molly. Right, so yes, so setting up terrain. So there is an alternative method in the book. Alternatively, what you can do is you can place the terrain out. And I'm just trying to find it. Yep, okay. So you place the terrain out evenly across the table.
Yeah.
So let's say you've got, for argument's sake, you've got 1 bit for every foot square. So you place 1 bit in every that foot. And then you scatter it 2d6 inches.
Okay.
And that's the final placement. So that's the alternative method in the rulebook. But I still think when I'm going to be playing a game, I would still do it the way I always do it. And that is setting up terrain before my opponent comes, and we agree or disagree that it's fair, and we just shift it as we want. I think waiting for your opponent to come round and place it turn by turn or do that scatter thing, it's just added time that you don't want to be spending mucking about, don't you?
Yeah, I just think you waste so much time where I'd like to think, and that's where I was kind of getting at earlier, common sense is something that it needs to have drilled in. Like, I don't know anyone playing Heresy who is like 8 or 9 who might, like my nephews, I would hate to play. I played a 40k game with my nephew to teach him how to play, and they just cheated the whole game, and it was crap, and it was pointless. And they gave up because they didn't think they were going to win, so and they just walked off. So it's that sort of like, I'd like to think we're all mature enough that if you came round to play here, you're not going to be thinking, wait a minute, he's got every single tall bit of terrain on his side of the board, and I've got none. Like, I'd like to think that would be where most people would be fair, because you've not fallen out at that point yet, so everyone should be treating each other nicely. So I think, I don't think many people will disagree with that. It just doesn't. It's not an essential bit in the rulebook. Like, you could just take that out and not have that section at all. I don't think it needs to be in there.
No, I agree. It's common sense driven, isn't it? So
and then you sort of come on to, unless you've got, well, let's see, have you got anything written down that, or you just want me to plough on?
No, just plough on through the sections. I think we've pretty much covered that terrain, but there's nothing more to say about that.
So you've turned up. I've already set up the terrain, and then we come down to deployment. So, I suppose this is kind of your section really, because Alpha Legion have a bit of shenanigans in the deployment section. So, when I try and sort of think where I'm going to put stuff, It's not very original. Like my Devastators are going on a tall bit of terrain so they can get the most coverage. They're probably going somewhere in the middle if they can, because then they can shoot at lots and lots of things. My tanks are going somewhere where I can drive them forward a bit. Like, I'm probably not a very original player when it comes to that. And I don't think I don't think anything would surprise anyone. Like, you want to go first in this game. It's rare, unless I was doing a flyer list or a drop pod list, where I might want to go second. I don't think I would particularly ever want to go second by choice, unless I knew all my guns were like 24-inch range and I didn't want to have to waste a turn. So I don't know what you think about your sort of deployment when it comes to that.
I think it's a bit skewed for me because I'm usually always infiltrating, so I always usually deploy after everyone else. But deployment wise, I put a lot of stuff in reserve too. So I think that's a bit skewed for me. Essentially, when I deploy, I try and deploy everything within a position where I can start attacking you from turn one. I'm either infiltrating into place, like you said about your tanks, making sure they've got a front forward facing, a way through. I've usually got my outflankers coming in the side. But interesting point about the you always want to go first. I think because of the way the game is constructed and played, you never really want to go second. And I think that's a drawback of that. I go, and then do everything I've got to do, and then you go. And interesting what you said about the drop pods, because obviously I used to run drop pods with my World Eaters, but with them, I'm trying to think now. I think I always wanted to go second with them, because it meant I could counter your reserves.
Yeah, well, it also means that you're just on turn one, your opponent's getting to do nothing because you don't have anything on the board, which is a waste of a turn for them of shooting. So I think that's where I would say you probably always want to go second.
Sorry. All I was going to say is, I'm sort of like, I'm not 100% sure on how most armies are deployed. You deploy everything, and then your opponent deploys everything or whatever. I like the staggered deployment.
Well, so that, funnily enough, that is we're skipping into changes, but that's one I think would be if Heresy didn't nudge into a you go I go system, I think deployment definitely should. Even if the game stayed exactly the same otherwise, I think it should be I put down a unit and then you put down a unit, and whoever finishes first gets an advantage on the roll. Maybe not even just +1, but some sort of advantage on the roll to see who goes first. We're kind of jumping between the sections there, so we're giving away. So deployment. I guess I'm just really crap at the game. I don't really have a strategy for deployment. I think it tends to be, obviously, if I'm deploying first, there's an issue there about sort of I've got to sort of show my cards. Is that the right way of putting it?
Yeah, I would agree.
It looks like I've got it on a stream here to see what it looks like. As long as you can hear me, who cares? As long as I'm not breaking it. So let me know if you can't hear me, guys. That'd be a big help. But I guess it's that showing your cards is just part of the game. Like, there's nothing you can really do differently at that point. You kind of just I've made.
I guess a big part of the deployment is making sure you know what you're going to do for your objectives. I mean, how's an easy way to put this? You're not going to put your tactical squad on the opposite end of the objective marker of the table. Do you know what I mean? So that's just basic forward thinking of the game. That's is what it is, isn't it? And I think the staggered in of deployment of units would actually give you a bit more into the game and into that stage. It would give you a bit more to think about and do. And
I think Games Workshop games have always suffered from a sort of a you can lose in deployment. Fantasy in particular was horrible for that. Like if you played,
yeah, I was going to go on and say that. Yeah,
I think 30K is almost in that, where you could put down your super heavy, but if you leave too big of a gap round it, someone can deep strike next to it and then it's blown up. Like there is some element of that, but it does sometimes you can put your units down wrong, and you then, like if you put your slow moving tactical unit and you put a tank behind them and you're trying to move forward, you can sort of really rob your tank of momentum.
yeah.
I think that's an issue that I try and avoid. But I don't know, deployment just doesn't really. Maybe that's an element competitively that I'm not very good at, because I don't really have much in terms of a mindset. Like I want the long range guns to be able to shoot for as many turns as they can from as high up as they can, probably. And beyond that, I don't really think there's much. Usually I'll be wanting to move across the board or something anyway.
Yeah.
So there's not very much in terms of that. One bit though, and I've got kind of a bugbear about the deployment types. I actually like the deployment types for the most part. But how many people in the chat, if you can still hear us, because nobody has confirmed that you can still hear me, which is a bit worrying, how many people reroll or ignore ambush when it comes up?
I do.
I think ambush is really, really, really shit.
Yeah.
Because it's just not. It implies that one army is attacking and one is defending, which is, I'm kind of again jumping into the changes I would make, but like World Eaters being ambushed is fine. I think that's okay, but because you can outflank them and outmaneuver them and get them, but you're almost in charge range at the start of the game, and you're like,
yeah,
it doesn't. And if you get pie plates, so if the person who's on the outskirts has like a Typhon or something, well, there's like a third of an army killed in one shot, because it's really hard to deploy a large army in that circle.
Yeah.
And then there's things like, where do you run away? Like you always run to a neutral board edge, but when you're sort of like, oh, am I closer to this board edge or this one? It's not very. I don't enjoy that one in particular.
It pigeonholes you as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you get set up in that middle section, your side B deployment area, you're immediately on the back foot, and you're pigeonholed into taking it on all sides. And if you've not made a balanced army, or you've designed an army where you're sitting back and shooting, it's going to be a bad game for you.
Yeah. And I think that's the there's Lee saying he loves ambush because he's a Raven Guard player. Like, don't get me wrong, like I think there's a need for that deployment map to exist, but I think it really only suits like a narrative event, like the one side's getting absolutely hammered and now this is their chance to strike back, or this is them getting really hemmed in and they've got to win now. It just doesn't. Yeah, it's not, for me. It can really ruin if you've got like 3 Land Raiders and a Spartan because you're playing a themed Land Raider list. You're probably not going to get to fit them all. Like it's just and the terrain's going to be in the way, so you're just not going to work. So that's maybe an argument to say you should place the terrain. You go, I go. But if you know you've got ambush and you know you're the one that's not in the center, just put all the terrain in the middle, because it's just going to end up like ruining that person's night. Maybe that's
squish up all their tacticals in a wee blob.
So I don't like that one at all. So you get to that point, we've got our mission, and again, missions is something that we've touched on in terms of they're a bit samey now. I don't tend to reroll missions, but I do sometimes feel like we get unlucky and we play the same one sort of 3 or 4 in a row, and you're like, oh my god, we're playing this one again. Can we please reroll it? But it does feel a bit like if we do get a Heresy 2.0, if they could put more variation in the missions, I think that would be good.
Yeah, well, Yeah, so interestingly enough, it actually says, talking about the missions, I mean, how many years? I think I've played Heresy at least 6 years. I mean, I don't know how many years you've been playing. What, 8?
How long it's been out?
More? 10? I don't know. Anyway, but if you think about it, in your pickup game, I guarantee on a pickup game, most people are just rolling for those 6 missions. Okay, from the Age of Darkness table. So if you think about that, if you played one game a month, and let's say I've played for 6 years, I've probably played each of those missions 12 times.
Yeah.
Like, it does get a bit samey, even though the missions are great. But what's interestingly enough, is that we're not just set on those missions, and it actually says that in the rulebook. Now, obviously, you've got the black books, and those narrative missions are great. But for a basic mission that you don't have to do too much reading into, the rulebook actually does implore you to look at older 40k publications, which I think's a good possibility to expand our games and give us more options. Particularly 6th edition 40k. I think that's where the games are almost the most similar.
Okay.
And I think if you went through the 40k rulebook for that edition, you would find a couple of missions that you could play with Heresy armies without much alterations.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair enough. I think we've got lucky in that Heresy carried on down the path that's very similar to 5th, 6th, and 7th edition. So there is quite a lot of things to draw from, and the black books. You're right. I mean, I've stole a few of them for events. I think they're really good as well.
Because the only thing with the black book ones is, like I said, because they're generally more narrative, you do have to do a lot of reading into it and making sure things are right, and there's a lot of extra rules.
And then what about, sorry, I'm going to have to cough. So what about when we do Heresy.Scot events, we don't do, or you're not meant to, hopefully people do this because it says in the rule pack, when you table someone, or when your opponent wants to concede or whatever, I've made it quite clear that I treat that kind of harsh, because everyone's paid money to come and play at an event, and to concede can rob someone of a game. Like, I'm not, obviously if you've got like one model left and it's over, then it's over, but I kind of feel like you shouldn't. I feel like you should play on, and the missions don't support that. And the missions, basically, there's the sudden death rule or something it's called, where it just says, if you're done, you're done. Like, that's it. You give up, your opponent gets maximum points. If you get tabled, it just says if your opponent tables you, it's a win. It doesn't say anything about like they score all the objectives or anything. And I've kind of framed it in our events off. You get the rest of the game to move on to the objectives. And if you don't, so if you've sat at the very back of the board, you've smashed, but you've got to get to the other side of the board to win. Well, you're not going to be able to do it then. And I think that's, it's maybe not realistic, and that's what I'm expecting maybe people in the comments not to think it's particularly fair. But I kind of see it as, like, if your mission was to go and get a little black box, well, you've not done it. You've killed everyone defending it, but you've ran out of time. You just haven't, like, you're charging across no man's land, which you've claimed, but you've not actually managed to get to the point you need to before reinforcements come, which are off map, or, I don't know, the sun comes up and everyone knows you're there, sort of thing. And I don't know how people would react. I think people could see that as quite a negative thing, but it's just to try and encourage a objective playing mindset.
I think it was 8th edition 40k brought in the rule that no matter what the outcome of the game was, you still tally up how many victory points you've earned. So if your opponent's got like 100 victory points, let's say, which is obviously ridiculous, but I'm just choosing a random number here.
Yeah.
And then you've tabled them, but you had no victory points, your opponent who was playing to the mission and playing the objectives would still win.
Yeah.
I'm pretty certain that's how they changed it in 8th.
It rings a bell, and I think that is better. Like, I don't. How many war films have you seen where, like, the good guys, like the Dirty Dozen, they manage to do their objective, but they all die. Sorry if you've not seen it, that's a spoiler. But it's like 50, 60, 70 years old. But that, for me, is what that's a mindset is. Like, you've done what you needed to do, but you haven't made it out. And that's better, I think, as an experience than otherwise sort of... oh, you've actually got no guys left, and I've done nothing but shoot you, so I win. Like, I don't. It's a shooting game. It's a like, of course it is. It's set in the far future. We've all got big space guns that do space things, but it's not. It's not fun in a 5 or 6 turn game to. Oh, my opponent hasn't even moved because all their guns are longer range than mine, and they're just shelling me into oblivion. But no one in the chat has said anything negative about that.
I think at the end of the day, what we're seeing here is that GW are progressing, and people might disagree with me here, right? But GW have progressed their other games into that friendlier, social contract-wise game setup, shall we say? You know, like, yeah, you could table your opponent, but you know, you've got to play the objective still, whatever, like we just said.
Yeah.
But because 30k's just taken old 40k rules and not made changes to them, we're just on an overhang at the minute, where it's not really progressed in that direction either. So hopefully things like this will change, in my opinion, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think that's what we need to see. What the Scott's given up, I think, so he won't be coming back. I think that's maybe one of the most interesting bits to flick to in the new. I'm saying it as if it's happening. We don't know if it's happening. Whenever that eventually is published, I think that'll be quite a nice thing to flick to and have a nosy through and see if they have taken any of those bits in. Because I do think that's a big problem in a game which is almost like, it's friendly until it's not. Like, we've never really had proper crossed words during a game of 30k, and that's not because, like, I'm not saying we're horrible people to each other or anything, but we've never really sort of over dice got it really heated. But I could see how it could get people's backs up in a game system that's built like this, where like, you can win in a couple of turns because you've not done anything. And that's where I was kind of getting at that you go, I go thing. I think that's a better, more modern system, let's say.
Yeah.
But we're sort of jumping between fixing and discussing. I guess without Scott to keep us on track, we've not managed to do it. But I don't think he's even. Oh, it was his router. He's saying. Gary's talking about A Night in Keswick, which is that'd be a great porn film name. Anyway, so we've got to the point where we've got the mission. What happens in terms of, like, so we've started deploying. You get to do a lot of infiltratey things. So what about reserves? What sort of goes to, like, for me, reserves is something I have to do because I'm flying drop pods in, or I've got flyers. I don't tend to really use outflank that much as because I like to charge, and Space Wolves seem to have been set up to you want to get your models up the board as quick as you can, but be doing things with them on the way. It's not about sort of arrive on turn 2, do shooting, then on turn 3 you might get to charge. Whereas I could probably by turn 2 be charging if I just run. So I don't really use reserves unless I have to. So what sort of goes through your mind and parts of that?
So I usually always outflank tactical squads in a Rhino. The simple reason for it is it just gives me tactical flexibility. Yes, I do have to randomise the side of the table I'm coming on, but that tactical flexibility is keeping my tactical squads alive, I can get up the board really quick. I can get behind your guys if we are playing. And it's given me choices of easy targets. So it's a really strong move in the game for your forces. Deep striking, I don't really do it that often with the Alpha Legion, to be honest. But I definitely think reserves are handy. I love using them, but I think they're due some changes, personally.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, that's probably the bit I would say. I sound like a right miserable git. This is I hate sort of. I'm not deliberately tearing apart the game out of spite. I just reserves for me. So we're sort of getting into the game itself, and we're trying to focus on the pre-game setup. But
Yeah.
reserves has come up, and Lee has hit the nail on the head. Reserves are just so unreliable and shite. Like,
Yep.
if I've got a Thunderhawk and I've put like 300 points in it to bring on, more than that, you can put quite a lot in a Thunderhawk, and it doesn't turn up till turn 4. So at best, I'm charging you on turn 5 out of it. It's rubbish. Like, it's just shocking. Like, it's just crap, and it just discourages you from running such a. I mean, fair enough, that's my fault. You can say it's my fault for running a Death Star unit, and that's you've put all your eggs in one basket, and that's fine. I take that criticism fully. But it happens if you run pods as well. So 3 of your pods turn up, and then your other 3 don't. Like, okay, so my strike cruiser's flying over this battlefield, but somehow someone's managed to not push the button on time. It just doesn't suit this sort of super smart tactical genius of a Primarch to make such a crap mistake. And
Absolutely not. And that's what I was going when I said things need to change. Yeah, I big up reserves. I love using them, but they do go wrong on me sometimes. And like you said, the tactical prowess of a Primarch, the technological superiority of Space Marines, and they can't even get a drop pod to land in the right place.
Yeah, and it's a bit. I think there's, given it's quite a small field, really. I think that's the mechanism's just not quite right.
No.
And that goes for flyers as well. Like, I know there was a big long thread that Anuj was part of where he was saying like flyers were something he really hated in 30k, and I kind of get that idea as well. Like, I think a flyer doesn't do, like, it's not realistic is the wrong word, because we're playing like whatever 30,000 years in the future. But it just doesn't seem to work. Like, it doesn't. They aren't. They either come on and they're amazing, or they come on and they're just crap. They get shot down. Like, it's very off-putting to think. Like, you almost have to build contingencies into your lists, because you're like, right, well, my flyer might turn up, but that Deredio over there might kill it, so I need to have a second flyer. And then it just starts to get just to get that one thing you want to do, you're building contingencies and spending loads of points on it. It just doesn't really work for me. And there seems to be people in the chat definitely agree. And the outflank randomness as well that Finn has said, the outflankness, like, that is very strange to be able to. You've got a Meltagun squad that you want to outflank next to the tank that's on the left-hand flank, but you roll bad and it comes on the flank with nothing on it. Like, okay, I guess I won't be shooting them this turn.
Yeah. Do you know what? People are just going to just tell me to go play 9th edition after this. Right? I swear I'm not trying to break the internet, but, like, why can't we just have our reserves come in when we want and we don't scatter? Like, I don't see any issue with doing that.
So we're auditioning for a new member of the
podcast. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, when you put a unit in reserve, you're trying to outsmart your opponent, right? That's the basic of it. That's the basis. But I get. But okay, sometimes you're playing a narrative mission, and the reserves are like reinforcements that could be delayed. Fair enough. But most games, you're putting stuff in reserve to outflank your opponent, or to outsmart them, whatever, outmaneuver them. So I don't think there'd be any issues if we were just allowed to choose what turn our reserves come in. And I don't think there'd be any issues with no scatter either.
I don't know. I think it's an experiment, isn't it? Like, it's something.
Yeah.
I think getting to pick the turn maybe less inclined, but I would maybe agree with the sort of put them where you want them. I think that would have less of an issue. And there's someone in the comments saying the Emperor's Children have that right of war that lets you pick a turn. I guess it's more in a game where like reserves are kind of, you've sacrificed for a couple of turns. Maybe even you could say you can pick what turn they come on, but they don't come on till turn 3, like at the earliest. As a sort of a compromise, because otherwise you could bring them on in turn 2 and put them like the other side of the board, and then you've not had to walk anywhere, and your entire army should be in reserve. But I don't think they work very well as they are. So I'll certainly be interested in trying some stuff to. You've got to be a certain distance away, like almost like infiltrating as a reserve mechanic would probably work for me.
I think what you'll know yourself from me saying it before, but when you come on from reserve in like 8th and 9th edition 40k, you have to stay 9 inches away.
Yeah.
But I think that's only a mechanic in place because you can charge the turn you come in. So I don't know how much of an issue it would cause if you just came in and could place as close as you want. I don't know. It's something that would have to be sort of play tested and looked into.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something I'm interested in.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the things I would say needs to maybe the most pressing change, because it should be, almost feels like it's not advantageous to do it because it's so random what happens to you after. And that's, I think Space Wolves have acute senses, so I get a reroll on whatever side it is or whatever. Like, I don't know why it couldn't just be you get to pick the sides. Acute senses let you down. I can smell my way around because I'm a Space Wolf, but oops, I've rolled crap twice and I've picked the wrong side. It doesn't really make any sense. So I think we're probably all in unanimous agreement on that. So we've got to that point. We've just merged this section into one. Whatever. Losing Scott has meant we've gone off piste, but whatever. The other bit in that section is night fighting. And night fighting is just shit. Like, it really, I've probably said shit more times tonight than I've said in the last 10 minutes. I'm really sorry, everyone, for like
stressing you out.
Yeah, I think it's just, I don't want to be seen as negative because this is meant to be a really positive thing, and I think it's for the health of the game that we have this conversation.
But you're not. Do you know what? You're not being negative, right? You're looking for positive changes to further enjoy the game, I guess.
Yeah.
You know? So it's not negative. So that's fine. It's fine. Don't worry.
Well, maybe you're just a horrible person as well, though. Night fighting is just a rule that, for me, I don't get it, because it means that the game, in my opinion, the game would need to have an attacker and a defender in every mission. So before you get to the point where you're rolling for night fighting, it is known that I, as my Space Wolves, are attacking your Alpha Legion situation. We roll off for that.
Yeah.
Because then I would change the night fighting to be up to the attacker to really mess about with. And that would suit Night Lords. I saw Willie's put his little bat symbol up. Because they have quite a strong mechanic around night fighting, and they need it, because if you take that away from them, well, they're like evil Batman, but they're running about during the day. It doesn't really have the same horror impact. And I just feel like if you're the attacker, you should have more sway around it, because like if I'm attacking you and I'm good in the dark, oh shit, I've picked the wrong time and it's actually 12 o'clock in the middle of the day. It doesn't make any sense. Like, it doesn't.
No.
Like someone in the chat's just spelling out there, it should be night fighting would be the whole battle, because I've attacked you at sundown. I'm not like, if I'm good in the dark, I'm not attacking you 3 minutes before the sun comes up. It doesn't make any sense then. And that's where I think it doesn't really work. But I don't think the mechanic itself is that great anyway. Like, you just get a boost to your cover save. Like, it could be a lot better.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, I mean, if you go into historical stuff, like the Jacobites attacked the English army, they wanted to attack in night time and they got lost on the way and then had to retreat back to Culloden and got smashed. Like, it doesn't, I guess in real life, the plans can go wrong.
Yeah,
But,
I'll ask you a question on this. How often do you genuinely roll for night fighting or remember to?
so I do quite religiously, because I read through the mission as we're going through it. But
Right.
I don't think night fighting is generally. I'll have to flick
It's
through the
not.
page.
It's not on the wall, to be fair.
But I don't think it's under. Like, it's written quite far on in the mission. I'm just flicking to one to see. It's under mission special rules, so it doesn't say like deployment, blah 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 blah, roll for night fighting. It's like right at the end of the section where it says mission special rules, reserves, night fighting, stage deployment. So it doesn't even like actually. The mission is almost encouraging you to forget about it.
Yeah.
Someone saying, Stephen saying, turn the lights off for night fighting.
Yeah, definitely.
Play the first 2 turns with head torches on. But it just doesn't, it doesn't do it for me. Because like Willie's, like the Night Lords are built with quite a cool mechanic that lets them stretch it out, I think. And they get benefits from it. But it just feels like how I'm going to moan about the psychic phase in the next one of these, probably, if we do that one. It's almost like it's a phase that only exists for the Night Lords then, and that's a bit. I'd like to see more about it, and that's me saying that as a Space Wolf player doesn't even get affected by it. So, well, other armies do, but
Sorry, on you go.
No, it doesn't really work. It doesn't. I don't think it delivers what you want it to deliver.
No, I'd agree. It just feels a bit lackluster, but it's just a. Do you know what? More than anything, it's just a pain in the butt.
But I would say, like, a fix for it would be, so someone saying put it in a narrative only situation. I would agree with that, because then it would potentially get blips out.
Yeah.
If you were doing true night fighting, and that would be a very narrative event to have, like, numbered blips that are your actual units. And that could be quite fun. But you're only playing maximum like 7 turns usually, so if the first 3 turns you don't actually know what's under some of these blips, like, how do you do your shooting? It doesn't really, like, it's not like Zone Mortalis where you can, like, because you're not able to see through the walls, it doesn't matter until you're actually exposed. But if I'm like, I've got a circle here, I'm going to shoot at you, and then you see me pick up 10 dice and I roll 10 dice and it's like, oh, these are las cannons. Well, now I know what's under that blip. There's no point in having a blip. But it's just something in that I think it'd be better to try and come up with a better system for it.
Yeah, I'm just looking for searchlights actually, because I feel like, so if a vehicle has a searchlight, it can, after firing all of its weapons, choose to illuminate its target with a searchlight. If it does so, it illuminates itself, but it illuminates the unit it has shone on, and they lose night fight.
Yeah, but
so
no, you let you finish and then I'll come in.
No, I was just going to say that just how many, most armies come with vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? So if you played that right, you're just nullifying night fighting anyway, even if you rolled for it. You know, you just shoot a vehicle. I'll shoot a rhino, right? I'll shoot my combi bolter off it, and then I'm going to shine that unit with my searchlight, and then all my other units are just going to rip that one apart. So, yeah, I don't know. It needs to be reworked. I'm just not sure how it would do it.
But the rule, and this is, someone's beat me to the punch there with Lee and who else said it? Super Soup. Their they remember an older version of the rules which reduced the range of your guns. I can't remember if it was a maximum of any gun.
Yeah.
It was something. It's like there's a vague memory in there somewhere about it maybe being your maximum range was 18 or something like that. It's something weird. Like I don't think it was just you half the range of the gun or something like that. I think it was like ridiculous that I think a 24-inch max. Lee has saved me there. And maybe there is something in that.
Yeah.
Better because then the Night Lords actually get a benefit as they close in to kill you. But again, I would say that should still have an attacker defender mechanic where once you've identified who the attacker is, they almost get to plan their assault, and they would be, if they had lots and lots of long range guns, the chances are they're fighting you in the day. So I think that's where it would be quite a good mechanic to look into bringing back again.
Yeah.
And there's someone sort of coming up with a better way of like controlling it, as Gary saying 6 up night fighting, 4 up for Night Lords, then a 5 up at turn 2 it ends, 4 up for turn 3, and eventually it disappears. I think because it doesn't make sense unless you're planning to attack at dawn at the minute. It doesn't really work. So yeah, I think that would be, I'd agree with that, and it's good suggestions there. Maybe that's something that they will change for the next one. So I'm almost run out of stuff actually. So we have overrun anyway because we said we'd finish at 9. But
I think we've covered it all.
Well, the last thing for me. So we've got to the point. You've turned up, which is nice. You've put your models down. We've got the mission. We know what we're doing. We've got it to the point where we've set up and we're ready to go. What about season initiative? I find season initiative to be just almost anticlimactic. And when you couple that with my idea, or our idea really, I'm including everyone in that now, of you go, I go, to deploy, I just don't think season is that great. Like, I think the idea of I've put my models down first, therefore I go first is fair. I think that in the current system is the only way to do it.
Yeah.
Because if I put all my models down, you put all yours down, and then we have another roll off, and you win. Well, you've not only have you got the tactical advantage, but now you're bloody going first. Like so I understand that in the current system is the only way it can work. But 30 minutes of dog walking left. I'll try my best to drag it out, but I don't think we'll have 30 minutes left in us. The idea of you go, I go with a roll at the end, and then no seizing, maybe. Like I don't.
If you look at how fantasy's done, it's you go, I go. Whoever deployed their army first gets +1 to roll to go first.
Yeah,
that's it.
I think that's fine.
I think that's fine.
I know Alfarius has a sort of a cheeky.
So he can
do stuff.
Yeah,
a couple of characters can re-roll the seized initiative roll, but you just change that for them. Give them something else. It's not like it's that or nothing. So I don't enjoy season. I think it doesn't swing a game, and it sort of feels like it doesn't. It doesn't deliver the thing that you want it to do. So like what does it even mean? Like, so you have seized the initiative and you've managed to outmaneuver me and you go first. I find a lot of people roll it no matter what. I don't think the idea that like some people roll for it and you're thinking, and when I'm watching someone roll for it, I'm thinking I wouldn't have rolled for that if I was you. I would have probably wanted to go second, but it's interesting. It's almost like a temptation that people want it because it's another thing they can do. But then it encourages alpha striking, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think like we said before, the way the game plays, you kind of almost nearly every time want to go first. And that's probably why people always want to seize the initiative. Yeah, and I think, do you know what? See if you were playing me, right, and I'd like infiltrated nearly all my stuff, and within 18 inches, and you seized the initiative, then yeah, you're gonna have a great game. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's.
So it doesn't deter someone from doing that alpha strike, but yeah, it does give them a kick in the balls a bit for doing it.
But I guess then that would be like there's certainly other ways of. So you do all your infiltrating, you get right up next to me, and then I roll the 6. Like it's almost the mechanic doesn't. It's not strong enough. Then.
It's not because like I'm willing to take that gamble, aren't I?
Yeah, and I've got a 1 in 6 chance of screwing you over. Like it doesn't feel like that's good enough odds to discourage you from doing that.
No.
And that's where you kind of get into the, well, maybe I'll need to start taking a 5-man recon squad to try and block off some of your infiltration route. But
Yeah.
that's like, again, that's tailoring. It's sensible tailoring if you know you're going to get infiltrated in a big semicircle that's going to come and get you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think I guess that's the seize the initiative role. It's like it's one of the key things that you look at as a rule and you think they're trying to do something there to fix a problem that maybe doesn't exist in every meta and every group.
Yeah.
And it makes sense when you sit and you dissect it, but it doesn't actually do
It doesn't
the fix
work.
that you want it to do.
Yeah.
Like night fighting doesn't
Yeah.
do the thing that you're trying to get it to do.
Yeah.
I'd like to see something change to try and someone saying
And-
the
and-
9th edition infiltrator set up along the rest of the army but can deploy outside the deployment zone. I don't know about 9th, but Stephen's giving you jarring you about your infiltration.
What's that?
Stephen's jarring you about your infiltration. We need to see the chat.
All right. Okay. So you're saying I don't want to play 9th with my infiltrators? What was I going to say? So that's seizing the initiative thing. They're like you said, they're trying to fix a problem which isn't always there, and it's it's not really a great fix even when you need it. But if they did change the way of set deployment, as in you go, I go, you sort of counter your opponent as you're doing that anyway. So I think it would possibly remove that issue of
also,
the alpha strike.
When you've got infiltrators, like you do at you go, I go anyway, don't you?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you've got to roll it off and one goes.
So, I mean, they've kind of already identified that's a problem in that section of deployment. So,
Yeah.
I think it's just something
Strange one.
I'd like to see a bit of an overhaul of that, and it would just be. I think I could see certain armies getting a boost from some of these changes that we've put forward, and probably the ones that need it. Like if you're saying potentially reserves changing, that would definitely suit someone like World Eaters, and give them a chance to get up the board. I don't know. I guess as we're kind of, unless you, well, what have you got anything else to add that you would change before I've just sort of rambled on there?
No, to be honest, I think we've covered everything. There's nothing really else I would really change. You've gone through it logically, and I think we've covered everything ourselves. Better than just jumping in whenever. So no, I'm all right.
Not seen anyone in the chat sort of
No.
telling us we've missed something or telling us off. This is your last chance if you do. So I guess I would. It's just with those rumours. I don't know if you've seen them. I know you've talked about it, Richard, but
yeah,
there's definitely something going on, and I think there is. One of the things that I've not seen mentioned is Anuji's LinkedIn that talked about an unpublished Heresy book, and and I think being brutal, they've probably written a rule book. It's just not been released, and I don't think that's that amazing because I imagine they've got the next rules are underway already. I don't think there's I don't think there's anything shocking to know that Games Workshop have probably written the next 3 black books, even if they don't publish them, because they're not doing any more black books. It's not. Why would that be a surprise to people? Because it takes a long time to put them together. There's an interesting one actually. Stephen has said painting and basing your forces before playing. I guess we don't really have, like, I don't have a problem playing unpainted stuff because quite a lot of it is unpainted. But it's nice. And everyone should make that effort. I guess with our little clique up here in Inverness, you can see when people are putting effort in, and that's all that matters. I don't think it's really about like, I'm not expecting someone to go from 0 points to 3,000 painted and based in a couple of days.
I'd agree. I have no issues playing someone with unpainted or unbased models. You know, the more we play, the better. And if somebody's playing, then they're probably going to get more hyped to paint their miniatures. So I've got no issues with that. Yeah.
The comments are good with people panicking about getting ready for November. Yeah, I think that's, someone just putting the effort in makes enough of a difference for me not to feel like I've got to sort of Willie, you better get painting. But it's, I think, well, you take my example. So my Space Wolves, I've had them pretty much since the start. Like, there's loads of them down here that you can't see because there wouldn't be anything to see because I'm just picking up models to show you. It doesn't mean anything, and the camera's not good enough to show anything anyway. So I've got a massive batch on the go now, and they're long overdue. Although most of these models are actually newer. Like, I've got the Variger and I've got a couple of conversions and stuff. I just think you've got to reach a point where you're in the mood. You're confident with your painting skills, or you don't care. Like, I don't care if these are particularly good because I'm not that good a painter. And just finding that time. Like, I'm quite happy batch painting. That's my thing. It annoys Gary, and it annoys, well, not annoys. He rips me for it because I'm painting about 60 guys at the minute and 6 dreadnoughts. And most people would consider that crazy. But I think you just have to find your own wee niche, and you have to just do what suits you. If that works for me, it doesn't have to work for you, and what works for you won't work for me. Like James, we's doing that one model at a time or a couple of models at a time. I don't like changing my paint that often. Like, when I would rather just brush one colour for 8 hours. So it has got a lot of interest in the sort of chat of people saying.
Well, here's an interesting point for you. I don't mean to drag this on, but like I said, I don't mind playing unpainted and unbased locally. I'd actually even go as far as to say I wouldn't mind playing unpainted unbased at a narrative event, given that there was some things in place which would sort of give you a benefit for having your army painted and based. So, like, I'm doing a fantasy narrative one, and I've got a matrix in there where you can essentially get awarded extra event points for having a painted and based army. But it means people with unpainted and unbased armies can come along and play.
Well, I think
even in that aspect, I wouldn't be. It doesn't even bother me.
I think for that, you've got, like, there's been things that have happened that even in the small number of events that we've run where you can tell, like, someone has turned up in their army. I think some of the models didn't have shoulder pads, and I think some didn't have guns. If I've got a funny memory of but at that stage, as an event organizer, like, I can't do anything about it. What, you want me? Do people genuinely think I'll be saying to someone, like, sorry, pack your stuff and get out? Like, that's a very, maybe it's arguably the right thing to do, but it leaves me a person down. It maybe means some people don't get an opponent, and I think, again, as Cypher's saying there, that social contract, that expectation that you would have had a damn good go of painting it. Like, if you bought it the week before and you've got bases that don't even have the guys glued to them, they're just sitting on top of it because you've rushed to paint to build them over the course of a week, probably not got much sympathy out of me. But if you've put a bit of an effort in and you've done your best, and maybe they're just not based, well, I'm not going to kick you out for that. Like, I don't think.
No, absolutely not. No.
But
Like I said, the more you can get someone playing the game, the more hyped they're going to get about it, and that's going to give them the motivation to get painting.
Yeah, and I think that's what's maybe worked. Because I don't know if you guys probably doesn't like any of the usernames, or not many of them are in our Discord that we've got on the go, and you're all very welcome to join and shoot me a message or find it on the Heresy.Scot Facebook page if you want to join it. I found that quite useful, and I see a couple of people saying they hate painting. I really don't like painting. Like, I find that the worst bit of the hobby for me. I don't enjoy it. But actually having this pile of guys, they're coming on all right, and you guys have been very supportive, and you guys have been we've spent sort of 3-4 hours on the Discord, and that's been brilliant, and we do that sort of 2 or 3 times a week where we jump on and it's just chatting. But it's finding that thing that gets you doing it. Find the thing that actually, whether that's knowing that your pals will appreciate it, or whether it's just bloody getting it done and wiping the sweat off your brow. I think that's the bit of the hobby that we just have to. You have to do it. You can't escape it.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah.
Just seeing if there's anyone. Someone painted something over 2 days. 3K over 2 days. Yeah, so someone's asking for the Discord link. I'll do that. We're kind of winding down, so I'll get that one.
Yeah.
I've got you on the chat so you can all see it anyway. And really what we're looking for, I'm sort of trying to do 2 things at once now, which is a mistake. What we're trying to do is try different things. So what I do in the events is, so this link will be valid for 7 days, so don't hang about. I could make it permanent, but I won't, just so that we can make sure we don't have loads and loads of bots join. There you go. When it comes to sort of planning an event, I like to mix it up. I think that having, sorry, I've shown you I'm off the, you're getting to see it now. I find it very valuable in events to mix it up, because I think that's something that enables me to, so one event I'll try and write, we had an event where we ran the narrative live, so it was getting written. I've frozen again. That's a brilliant look on my face there. That's what I get for helping. I'll leave a smiley one up. So
sheep.
We ran, sheep were a brilliant one. Well, we ran an event where we ran the narrative live, and Miko was typing it up and making it up as we went, and it kind of worked, but it was a struggle when we were throwing, like, he threw things in like the Inquisition, which didn't exist in 30k at the time, and that's what made people sort of like, oh, this isn't really working. So I like to mix it up and try different things at different times. So this is what the whole point of the stream is, that we've done one where it's been less. We didn't put the debate in because people didn't like that. We haven't put in like soapboxy stuff. I guess the whole thing's a soapbox, really.
Yeah.
But it's about us trying a different one. So we'd like to get that feedback, and that is so important for us to shape this and see where we're going with it. And obviously we had the tech issues again, which is annoying. But we're trying to make this show interactive. And if you don't think it's been interactive enough, then we would love those suggestions on how to make it more interactive, so that you guys can get more involved.
Yeah.
And just build that wee community thing that we're trying to do. So please, if you've got any feedback, you can send the email. It's admin@heresy.scot. You can get on the Discord and leave us a message. And just wade in and tell us what you think. And it can be anonymous, or it can be, I'm a big boy, I can take the feedback. I'm not shy.
Yeah, all and any feedback's good feedback. You know, if people think we're doing something wrong or not right, then tell us, because that's going to be more important than anything.
Yeah.
So we get it right. And also on that, topics people would like covered. I know Alex had asked about the Mournival ones,
Yeah.
which was quite a good suggestion. Definitely something I'm interested in covering.
And we've got
Um,
potentially the part 2 of this is to go through the actual game.
Yeah.
And it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be next because they are only one a month. We're only really planning one a month because I think it can go too crazy with this. That's way overran. 47 minutes we've overran what we planned, and I'm sure people are getting fed up hearing me talk. Well, the viewers have gone up for some reason on the stream. That sort of just trying to get it right for you guys is what it's all about. And if you think it's not working, then I want to know how to make it better. So please do fire things in.
Yeah.
And just formed in my mouth a little fin is a brilliant. Need more references to 9th edition 40k. Yeah, that's not going to happen. Richard's off the team. That's why I turned off his camera. But it's just about having a laugh, and that's what it's all about. So yeah, get the feedback in. One of the sort of ideas would be sort of looking at Mournival events, looking at character creation, talking about how we go about planning events. But I'm just going to end up rambling if we carry on, and I think it's time for a cup of tea or whatever. So just to say big thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for sticking by it. I know there was
Yeah,
that
thanks, everyone.
issue. We will look into that and see what it is and whether it is me again that is the curse of Discord. But hopefully get yourselves into this. I think a few people must have joined because there's lots of lights up the side of my Discord thing. And all you do, just drop a message saying I'm going to jump onto the voice channel. If you've never used Discord, there's a wee voice channel called General. Click that, it'll take you in there, and people can see you're in there. We usually jump in and have a chat if we're about, usually in the evenings during the week. On the weekends, quite a bit of time. I'll be on tomorrow sometime, and we can have a bit of a chat and I carry on, and you can give us feedback then. Be good. And a clear basin episode. That is definitely the note to end on. Not having that. And I will hopefully speak to some of you guys on the Discord shortly. So thanks very much, guys.
Yeah.
And we'll speak to you later.
Yeah, thanks very much. Cheers. Bye.